Let's hope no one heard that. I got stung by a fucking YouTube advert. But, yeah. Hello, everybody. Just checking the phone. Right, time to film the quick Instagram advert. Hey everybody, Dre here. Filming myself. Currently live on YouTube /Motorsport 101. Again, trying out and seeing if this booster works. Check it out. Okie dokie, that's out there. Hi guys. You guys good? I hope you guys doing all right. I am back. For those guys that didn't see me on social media, quick explanation as to what happened a couple of days ago. Simply put, our connection dropped frames like a motherfucker. It really did not help. We don't know the exact reason as to why it suddenly stopped working. I would go out on a limb and say that rumour has it, at least in the UK, that every internet provider is apparently struggling right now because everybody's at home during lockdown. Everybody's using the internet more, and it's putting a strain on providers. So it would make sense as to why we dropped a lot of frames. I tried 2 or 3 different fixes to try and get the connection going again. None of them worked, so I had to end the Hangout early. Since then, Sky, the providers of my internet, we got in touch with them, and next day delivery, they sent us a booster. It's a little white box that goes downstairs next to my windowsill, and it's a connection booster, so fingers crossed the connection is strong enough now where we won't have to drop frames like a motherfucker every 2 seconds. So, hopefully, with a little luck, it's now up and running, it's all good, and hopefully we can do this a little bit more often. Fingers crossed, no promises, but so far, so good. Not a single dropped frame on the bottom of my screen, as what OBS is telling me, which is great. So, you know, fingers crossed. My computer's whirring like a bitch, but hopefully nothing happens like that again. It was about an hour before it started having problems last time anyway, so, you know, this is more of a test than anything else, but hopefully it will be a successful one, because I do actually want to do more of these. But, again, if we can't, we can't. So, second. Okay. Checking the chat. Let's have a look. Oh god, my god, a lot of guys tuned in a hurry. I didn't think there'd be so many people coming in, but here we are. Hi Conan, hi Cam, good to see you. Jason, is this now a Ben Stokes fanboy channel? Honestly, like, it's more a Miami Vice fan channel, because I got the special pink kit from South Africa from them earlier this season. Trust me, after yesterday, this is no longer a Ben Stokes fan channel. Trust me. But, yes, a very nice shirt indeed, as Don points out in the chat. Very good, very good. I'm watching someone who's watching while I'm watching. Good to see you. Thanks, fellow Dre. Hello, Jason. Again, sorry, nice to see you. Mr. Random Guy, you made it. Nice one. Good to see you. Yes, mechanical keyboard as well for the noise on that one. So it's one of my keyboards a little bit louder than most. It's quite pretty, but hopefully it'll work out. I don't know if I can show it here real quick, but there you go. It is a Giza mechanical keyboard, rainbow colours and everything. So yeah, it's quite useful that. So yeah, hopefully you guys can stick around. So far, so good. And, you know, if it does stick around, we'll do these maybe once every other week or so. Sai, nice to see ya. Ashy Boy, first time watching me live. Thanks, man. Hope you guys enjoy it. Owen! Hello, Owen. Good to see you, man. Long time no talkie. Hope all is well up there. Across the pond. Cal Crutchlow hits the deck more than your frame's dropping. Ah, ouch! That hurts, man. Hopefully, the tech will prevail. Like I said, so far so good. Yeah, Richard, nice to see you, mate. Hope you're doing cool. Hope you're doing all right. Let me know how you guys are doing. If you want to like, feel free. Just gotta share it on my Discord, and then I'll shut this shit down. Anything to avoid me using too much internet would probably be ideal. That. Get rid of that. Get rid of Discord, because I can use that on my phone. Don't need Facebook open. Cool! Yeah, so, again, just keeping an eye on it. Everything looks stable, which is promising, so yeah. Haven't pushed it too hard, but yeah. Hi Ben, good to see you. Good to know you're doing all right, Owen. Great to see you. Again, it'll be first stream I've caught in years. Been watching since the F1 2011 days. You've legit been part of me growing up at this point. Condon, I'm so sorry, buddy. Oh dear, oh dear. Yeah, like, I do remember I started making Formula 1 YouTube videos on September 2011. September will be my 9th anniversary of making Formula 1 videos. I've actually been making videos in general since 2008, believe it or not. I used to play Halo, I used to make video blogs when I was in school, basically. So, it's been a long journey to even get to the point I was making motorsport videos, let alone making videos on motorsport, which you probably are now most known for. So, you know, it's crazy. But, yeah. You know, I'm glad you're still around, Colin. I really appreciate that. Let's check the chat. Dusted off MotoGP 15 and enjoyed it. Told you, Joey. I told you. I think it's the best game in the series. I always have. I thought it was the most fun game out there. It was the first time that you can. It's the first time you can create your own team. You can set up your own bike and parts. You know, set it up that way. Yeah, you know, it's a great game. I've always said 15 was the best. Like I said, I think once they went to Valentino Rossi the game, the handling model stopped being as fun. So, you know. But like I said, 20 is alright. People have asked me about it. 20 is fine. It's if you put the time into it, 20 will serve you very well. The 4-strokes are very fun. Not so much the MotoGP bikes. But again, that's just my opinion. Again, I think Milestone's going very sim. I think they're pretty much following in Cody's footsteps, and I'm not entirely a fan of it, but needs must. Mr. Random Guy asking, what do you think of the esports races? Well, I talked about it on Twitter about an hour ago, before I started going online, and I talked about it a little bit during the Friday hangout I did, but I'll use the analogy one more time. I said it was like, it's like Diet Coke. I like Diet Coke. I will drink a Diet Coke if it's offered to me. I will happily finish it. But I'm not going into a shop and buying a Diet Coke if the options are available. You know what I mean? So, I think they've been fine for what they've worth. I think they serve their purpose, but I think the market is way too oversaturated for these now, because every major motorsport series you can think of has an esports or exhibition race equivalent now, and it's the same names that are being used over and over and over again, like Jimmy Broadbent, like Lando Norris and George Russell and Charles Leclerc. And don't get me wrong, those guys have been great. It's actually great we're getting some personal time with Formula 1 drivers and accessibility that we've never had before. But it's the same names that are being constantly used. It's like the same pool of about 40 or 50 people. Like the race, for example, have their Legends Trophy, and it's the same names every week. It's, Dario Franchitti, Jenson Button, Emmanuel Pirro, and they absolutely dropped their pants when Sebastian Vettel rolled up out of nowhere in the middle of last week's show. But he's not as experienced as other guys that have had their rigs for a month or two, and of course he's going to be at the back of the field. Like that, you could tell that a mile off. He's not going to suddenly come in and just beat people on R-Factor 2 all of a sudden, So, that was never going to work out. So, like I said, I think it's fine for what it's worth. I'm glad that they've started to split the format up now, so where now all the professional esports drivers are now racing each other, and like the personality or celebrity names are all in the same pot now. That's definitely an improvement. But overall, after IndyCar's finished, which I thought was the best of the bunch, I've stopped watching them. I only had it on in the background on yesterday because I was watching King. He was doing the iRacing Indy 500 yesterday on our Discord server, and I was watching that. Yeah. It serves its purpose, is what I will say. It's getting a little bit more on the toxic side now, because it seems that Lando Norris's fans, are a vocal minority of them, are immature children that believe the sun shines out of the man's arse, and they take their anger and volition out on anyone to do with him, like what's happened with Jimmy Broadbent, how his chats have turned into a cesspool. And like Jimmy Broadbent got death threats in Bahrain when Lando took him out at the final corner. Totally Lando's fault. And of course, Jimmer took the brunt of it. We all know what happened in IndyCar last week. It's all starting to get a bit stale. It's all starting to get a little bit toxic and a little bit samey. And it's all just a bit at this point. And it's like, I don't like being cynical when these guys are trying to put an effort on for our entertainment's sake, but it's pretty clear they're now reaching out to more and more celebrity names to basically give their series a short-term shot in the arm that clearly will not happen once we actually get racing again. I've said it before and I will say it again. The F1 series reached out to Ben Stokes, it's reached out to Stuart Broad, to Alessio Romagnoli, who plays at AC Milan. We saw Sergio Aguero in there last Sunday. There was a picture on Instagram that Liverpool right-back Trent Alexander-Arnold has been sent a rig by Red Bull. And again, seeing Ben Stokes in there, isn't a surprise, because Stokes is sponsored by Red Bull himself. So they're sending these dudes rigs and basically saying, can you drive him in this esports race for us so we can get some publicity going? And yeah, it is what it is. Everyone's trying to out-promote each other, and that's what it's going to end up being. I mean, it's no different from guys like Will and E racing in Veloce's esports series, or whatever you want to call it, If you want to watch them, I actually reckon, I think the race is the best of the ones they've got left, with Jack Nicholls and Jolyon Palmer and the Legends Trophy. I think that's probably the best of the bunch now. But, yeah, make of that what you will. Just going to turn my light on 1 second. down so I'm a little bit brighter. Okay. Internet booster seems fine. Audio output only focused on the left. Yeah, hang on. I don't know why that is. Huh. Actually don't even know how to change it, to be honest with you. Okay. I'll have to fix it another time. I look into that with OBS tutorials and whatnot. I don't think it's a massive game killer that I'm only on one speaker unless you've got headphones in, which, you know, not much I can do about that. Checking the chat. Hey, Kelly. Nice to see you. Hope the porridge is good. Oh, God. Bit of an inside joke. If anyone follows me on Instagram, you might have seen a couple of days ago, my mum recommended, because I have, as a Jamaican, I tend to have inconsistent skin. Some of it goes dry, some of it goes really oily, and to help with dry skin, Mum says wet porridge is actually a really good way of fixing that. So I was literally covered, like my chest and my armpits and the back of my knees were covered in wet porridge yesterday. The funniest part of that really was the fact that my ex-girlfriend DM'd me on Twitter and Instagram and said that I'm laying more first, and I'm like, if me, a 20 stone, 6'2", like slightly overweight black guy covered in porridge is a turn on for you, then I can't help you. Basically. So, you know, read into that what you will. Hi Brennan, good to see you. He's recovered from yeeting off Juan Pablo Montoya and iRacing a couple of days ago. Lando fans also watch Ninja, wouldn't surprise me. I enjoyed the Legend series on the race, but the F1 virtual series is something I have no interest in. Yeah, fair enough, Toby. I don't blame you. Again, pick and choose what works for you at the end of the day. Like, I don't watch really any of them now, because like I said, I think there's nothing new here. Like, everything, you kind of know what to expect, and once you've seen 2 or 3, you've kind of seen them all, because you know who's good and you know who isn't. No one new is going to suddenly shoot in and, like, finish in the top 3 or 4. You know, the guys that are really good in the Legends Trophy is Franchitti and Pirro and a couple of Jensen Button and a couple of other guys. You know who the best ones in that series are. It's the same names that are up the front every week. You know. Ian Oni situation. Joey asked me about. Pardon me. Not much to really say that hasn't already been said. I think Ian Oni was lucky to get 18 months. It's hard to say, because in Ian Oni's eyes, he's taking it almost like it's a moral victory, because it's like, well, like, because he said himself, and the FIM also agreed that it seems that he's taken it by accident. It doesn't look like he did it on purpose, which is why he only got 18 months and not the normal 4-year punishment. He's going to take it to the Court of Arbitration for Sport on the basis of, well, if you agreed with my story, you shouldn't be charging me 18 months. I should be walking out here innocent, etc., etc. The problem is that's not going to get settled for quite some time, because the Court of Arbitration for Sport is not taking cases right now for obvious reasons. And look, if it holds up, Ian Oni's top flight career is probably over. He's already in his early 30s. He's going to probably have to sit out the next season and a half. You know, the only blessing for him is right now is that nobody is racing, and it looks like MotoGP won't be back until July, so it should be a career ender for Iannone. I mean, but we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, we'll have to go with that. Brennan saying your mic is probably only outputting audio only. Give me a minute. Let's go do the trick. Give me a minute, folks. I'm just going to try and see if I can fix the audio.
Watch your tutorial on how to reduce mechanical clicks, and there's one shot out on one side. Hear my audio coming out on one side, and actually in the new version of OBS, virtually moving on one channel. So the solution is super simple. Just go down to Edit, Advanced Audio Properties, go down to your mic. You'll see down mix to mono. Just hit that, and then boom, it's done deezy. And that's all there is to it. Should hear my audio coming on both sides now. So, yeah.
So there we go.
If you've got any questions,
I think that's now coming out of both sides according to my monitor. So that should now be working. Cool. Yeah, it's set to mono. So yeah, that seemingly has fixed it. According to that's what OBS is telling me anyway. So hopefully that works. Harold H saying, do you reckon we could see more esports drivers or riders making it into the real series? In cars, maybe. Definitely not in bikes, but certainly in cars. I don't think there is a straightforward formula of being good at an esports title like F1 2019 or an R Factor or an Assetto Corsa. I don't think there's a straightforward path into motorsport that way, but as an avenue of exploring potential talent, sure, why not? You know, and if people get an opportunity via video games, then why not? I think there is certainly some crossover skill that could come into play where that's concerned. So sure, why not? You know. Let's just double check. Bottas in your skin to own the lips. Hi Rory, nice to see you. I was living in Valtteri Bottas's dream. Yeah, I probably was, and I can't care to think of it. Is Lando your favourite driver after Vettel leaves? No. I am neutral on Lando Norris. I respect his ability. I respect his interaction with fans and the fact he's probably put himself out there more than just about anybody has in this downtime. I just don't particularly warm to him as a person. He's just sort of like there. I think maybe because I'm 27 now, I just don't find his sense of humour particularly engaging or funny. I just think he's just sort of like there to me. I've got nothing against him. It's just not really my cup of tea. I'm fine with Lando, but I'm probably not gonna have a favourite driver after Vettel leaves, to be honest. No one really strikes me as this uber likeable guy that is going to, you know, scream out to me and say, oh, this is the guy that we want, or this is the guy that, you know, I'm gonna support now. No one's really ticked that box in my brain yet since Sebastian's rolled up. If Jensen was still around, maybe, but obviously Jensen's time has come and gone. No one else really jumps out in my head, at least, anyway. Like, Charles Leclerc is alright, but again, I just don't particularly warm to him. He's just sort of there. You know, so yeah, it is what it is. Joey, who's my favourite member of Sky Sports F1? Controversial opinion, I'm not the biggest Ted Kravitz fan. I know everybody seems to love Kravitz. Again, another guy that's just sort of just like there. I always find Kravitz more awkward. I know for some people that's part of the charm. It never really has been with me. You said Natalie Pinkham with a laughing emoji, but I've always been a fan of Pinkham. Like, her podcast is actually, like, in the pink. If you listen to it, it's actually really good. Like, I know it's easy with Pinkham because she is very easy on the eye. She is the definition of, like motorsport broadcasting's hottest MILF. Like, I'm not gonna deny that she's very attractive, but she's genuinely a great podcast host and broadcaster in general, and one of the best of the bunch they have on there. Like, personally, I've always said Damon Hill has always been my favourite, personally. I've warmed to Damon a lot. He's gotten better and better at broadcasting over the years. I like the banter that Hill and Herbert have when they're on together, but overall, as like the best all-round broadcaster, I'd probably say Pinkham. Especially given she's got quite a hard rap being a pit lane reporter sometimes. In the sense of she's often fed lines via their producers and in their earpieces, like her and Rachel Brooks. It's a loveless, thankless job sometimes, and yeah, like, I think all round, I think Pinkham's genuinely the best of the bunch. Like, Simon Lazenby's like celery to me. He's just sort of there. I don't warm to him at all. I think he blocked me on Twitter because I think he vanity searches himself, and anyone that's critical of him, he just blocks. It's a weird man. Let's have a look here. All good now? Oh, great. The sound's going great. Excellent. Good to hear. Very good point, Kelly. MotoGP series is actually very good for online races because no one takes it seriously. I think that's part of the reason why everybody, like, from the outset acknowledges it is just a laugh. There's none of this like vague. Are we taking this seriously? Is it going to be like a, you know, is this going to be like a real race, like IndyCar series is, or is it just going to be a bit of fun, etc., etc.? Like, MotoGP is so laid back because their riders are all so laid back, and I think that's what part of what makes it so fun. I think their series has actually been excellent so far. So very good point there, Kelly. Rory, is MotoGP under the RADA code because in that case accidents are irrelevant? If there's dope in the piss, they gotta serve a ban. I don't think they are under the World Anti-Doping Agency, to be honest with you, Rory. I'll have to double check that, but I don't think so. Yep, again, more reports that the sound working is good, so good to see. Excellent. Hi Vic, nice to see you. Conan, what do you feel about the whole cost cap situation in Formula 1 at the minute? I'm not a massive fan of a cost cap, as I enjoy seeing the best tech and the top teams will still be at the top anyway. I see what you mean, Conan, but I think something has to be done. Like, I'm not saying you've got to be IndyCar where everything is spec, but if the big three teams can spend $300 million a year on their cars and independents can't, they are never going to win that fight. And when that happens, it makes your sport unsustainable, you know? And if your sport is unsustainable, you risk people quitting. And if the independents quit, the factories are at risk. Because ultimately, and I've always said it, that someone has to come in last. And that's a big part of the problem. I've always believed that the biggest issue that you've got as a sport is being sustainable. You want teams to be wanting to come in and contest and compete. Limiting the spending is not going to stop the best tech from coming through. It's just people have got to be smarter about how they spend their resources. That's all it is. The technology will trickle down into road cars anyway. That's always what the FIA has always wanted out of Formula 1 as a series. And with the cost cap, the problem is the cap is too high. Haas or a Williams or a Racing Point, they're not going to be able to spend to a $175 million cap. They won't be able to afford it. So what's the point? It's not like the NBA where you have to spend to within 95% of a hard cap. If a team can't spend to the limit, then what's the point? You're just leaving dead money on the table. Like, it's got to be at a number where everybody can roughly spend that sort of money on development, because the more you can do that, the closer you can get to that shift, the more competitive the sport will most likely be for everybody. Look, the big teams will still win. It's no different to when Penske and IndyCar dominate. They win. Them, Chip and Andretti tend to win the most because they still have the most resources available to them. Staff, tech, experience, driver quality, etc. But IndyCar still has this knack where on any given day, anybody can win. It's why IndyCar having like 9 different winners in a season is like a low year for them, you know? It's no different for when MotoGP standardized electronics in 2016, and all of a sudden in 2016 we had a season where 9 different dudes won a race. Lorenzo Pedrosa, Marquez, Rossi, Dovizioso, Iannone, Miller. Who else won a race that season? Crutchlow and Maverick Vinales. They all won a race that season. Actually, we all 9 off. Go me. Bang, bang. But that's how I look at the cost cap situation anyway. Rich is saying, I think the Aguero Red Bull night come off of a Puma being kit sponsored of Man City and Red Bull. Yeah, I think you're probably right there, Richard. I mean, Aguero is sponsored by Puma. Red Bull's very close to them. They have a collaboration with them. It wouldn't surprise me. Like I said, Ben Stokes took part because Ben Stokes is backed by Red Bull. Don't think that Stokes just bought himself a rig and wanted to race these dudes by stumbling upon a live stream. He was given one by Red Bull. The only difference is Stokes seemed to genuinely quite enjoy it. It's why he's taken part in 2 races now. I think that's part of the reason why. Fair play to Ben. He's plugged the shit out of the series when he has taken part. And I think that's part of the reason why Stuart Broad had a go, because he actually watched Ben in Australia the first time they raced there, and Stuart bought a rig and wanted to have a go. That is not the usual circumstance. Like I said, I saw it on Instagram the other day. Red Bull sent Trent Alexander-Arnold a sim rig. It was on his Instagram post saying, Max Verstappen, I'm ready for you. Like, so if you see Trent Alexander-Arnold sponsored for the next one, don't be surprised. You heard it here first. Rao asking, have I warmed up to Lewis in recent years? Yeah, for the most part. Lewis ain't perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but I genuinely think a lot of what Lewis comes out with comes from a good place. He's done a couple of dodgy things here and there, like when he was a bit pokey about his cousin wearing a dress, and his Tommy Hilfiger line saying it was meant to be for everybody, but it's got £250 jackets in it. You know, like, he's one of those rich dudes that clearly has forgotten that the average person hasn't got £250 of disposable income a month to spend on a jacket, but I put that down more to naivety than I think Hamilton genuinely being a twat or anything like that. I just think he doesn't know any better sometimes, because I think he's left the ends of Stevenage behind. But for the most part, Lewis's good far outweighs his bad as an overall ambassador figure for F1, certainly. Actually, boys, 17.5 analytics repetitive, yeah, would have said so. Mine would have probably been Carlos Sainz before his comments he made a few weeks ago. Yeah, very good point, Cameron. Yeah, absolutely right. Sainz being a bit of a xenophobe on his Instagram, which a lot of people didn't even see, was, Sainz dodged a bullet on that one, relatively speaking, because not only did he put up a quite xenophobic video about a Chinese restaurant, clearly not a lot of people saw it, because it wasn't talked about on social media very much. And when good friend of mine, Hazel Southwell, tried calling McLaren's PR out for it, for looking for a comment, she was shut down by one of her employers. Which is disappointing, to say the least, but here we are. Jerry was a Hulkenberg fan since 2012, and when he left Renault, I've not bothered about choosing another driver. Yeah, I'm in the same club as you, Joey. Favourite member of BT Sport? I would probably say tied between... You say Gavin, I agree. Like, honestly, BT Sports crew are all really nice people. I mentioned this, I talked about it on my Discord server last night, actually, because we were in a group chat, and I mentioned how Nice. Everyone on there was. I've been on their TV show. I was on MotoGP Tonight for a TV taping, like 5 years ago. I think it was 2015. I'll tell you a quick story. I was meant to be on there. I got tickets for the event when Marc Marquez was going to be down there, because it was the British Grand Prix that weekend, the weekend they were filming, and they film all of BT Sports TV studio stuff in Stratford. It's the other side of London. I live on the west side in Greenford. Stratford's about an hour and a quarter in that direction, towards the east side of London. So if you just get the central line, it's all the way down to Stratford, basically, and you got a little bus that took you to the studio. The problem was that they overbooked the Marquez show because the demand for tickets were through the roof. So they had to pick names out of a hat to get tickets, and I missed out, unfortunately. But they gave me tickets for another time, so I was like, okay, might as well use them. So I went down there, and the special guest they had that day was John McGuinness, the Isle of Man TT legend. I think 21 TT wins or some silly number like that. Now, I'm not a big road racing fan, so I wasn't really all that fussed about seeing John McGuinness. I was more there for the crew and everybody else, and like, everyone down there was class. Everyone was really nice, everyone was really friendly. Like, this is back when they had Ewan Thomas on their coverage, the former 400-meter track runner as well. I met Gavin down there. I met Neil Hodgson. We were all chatting in the lobby. They were chatting with fans. Like, I'll say this on the record: James Toseland is the nicest man in the world. I was there until like 9:30 at night. They started at 7. James Toseland stayed behind for like nearly an hour, signing autographs and taking selfies with fans. Toseland is class. And if you want proof, I took a screenshot of my Instagram from years ago. That is me with James Toseland. He's a disgustingly handsome fella. But that was me in 2015, back when I wasn't quite so chubby, and my hair wasn't growing back so fast. That's me with him. And there's Gavin Emmett. Again, class dudes. Like, really, really just super nice guys. Him, I actually walked back to the tube station with Ewan Thomas. Great guy. The only reason I didn't take a picture was because my phone had died. I ran out of battery power. It was a long day out. And iPhone 3s back then were terrible for battery life. But, all the BT Sport guys are class, but Toseland's a personal favourite. We've had him on we actually had him on Bike Live a few years ago when we were back on the Downforce radio, and again, he gave us half an hour of our time. Toseland's a great, great guy. So if I had to pick one, I would probably say Toseland. Karun Chenok's great, Charlie. I didn't mention him in my original talk about Sky F1's pundits, but Karun is really good. Like, very good all-rounder. For the most part, very rational in what he has to say. He's very reasonable. He's not one of these big hyperbole sort of dudes that has to be all clickbaity and whatnot. I'm a big fan of Karun. I think he's a very solid all-round pundit, and it's great to have a person of colour, you know, doing mainstream motorsport coverage, because we don't get very many of them, to say the least. So, yeah, like, Karun is great. Dom saying, I supported Nico Rosberg since 2008, and when he left, I stayed neutral for a bit, and then when Gasly got his F1 shot, I followed him. Seb's grown on me a lot, and he's probably my favourite now. Well, fair enough. Checking in. I was watching rugby from pre-Sky F1 and forgot Lazenby used to host it on Sky. Did he really? I didn't know that. Just as annoying there as he was at the Grand Prix. Yeah, I'm not a big rugby man, so I didn't know Lazenby used to do Sky's rugby coverage too. It's like David Croft, the commentator on there. It's like Crofty is kind of bad at the F1. He makes a lot of sloppy mistakes and is a bit all over the place. Brilliant darts commentator. Excellent on the darts. Like, always has been. But, F1, just dodgy. Yeah, I think the best F1 presenter in the UK was Jake Humphrey. Yeah, Humphrey was great. Humphrey was a very, very good anchor. It's kind of shame that he's burnt a lot of his goodwill with a lot of F1 fans, because he ended up writing a book about his time as an F1 anchor, and he was quite damning of the sport in general, and it's pretty clear that he wasn't actually all that passionate about it, and it was more he was just in it for a check, which is kind of a shame, but it is what it is. Humphrey's general ego on social media, I think, has kind of tainted it for a lot of F1 fans, but I'm not going to deny he was excellent at it as an overall anchor. Him, Eddie, and DC were great on BBC's coverage. Let's have a look. Vic Lewis has definitely had a lot less moments where he puts his foot in his mouth over recent years than 5-10 years ago. Yeah, couldn't agree more. Rao, what did Carlos say? Yeah, he mentioned... I can't remember the exact quote because this was a couple of months ago now, but I know he was talking... It was a prank video that was seemingly set up with him and the Estrella Galicia team, the beer suppliers in Spain, where they were talking about how a Chinese restaurant... Like, he made a couple of comments about a bat, obviously making a joke about where the coronavirus came from, and just talking about how a Chinese restaurant wasn't very European. Something along those lines. Again, I can't remember it word for word, so I don't want to be taken out of context here. I know from people who I trust, who have seen the video, that it came across as xenophobic. Certainly. Because I know Hazel very well, and I know Hazel would not chase that up if it didn't come across as extremely xenophobic. She's a brilliant journalist, and I trust her word on something like that. I'm not gonna put it out there and say word for word what he said. You know, I don't know if it's still out there on the internet somewhere. Fainted. Let's love Brundle when he was at the BBC and ITV, but since going to Sky. Yeah, I think Brundle has certainly played the Sky game a bit more since joining them, and I can see why. Like, when Sky F1 was formed, the big money transfer was snagging Martin Brundle. They paid Brundle $500,000 a year to jump over. Big goddamn salary they used to pay for... They paid big money to get Brundle over to make him sort of like the big face of their coverage. They already gutted BBC's team dry to the point where they had to get Susie Perry in because BT Sport snagged Jake Humphrey and whatnot. So they were always on the back foot on that one. But Brundle, I think, is a bit more of... Brundle's become a lot more opinionated as the years have gone by, and I'm not exactly a fan of it. He's an excellent colour commentator, the best in the business, as a colour commentator, but as an overall pundit, he's gone down a little bit in my estimation. He's not my favourite, he's fine. Question from Jason. Oh, I was wanted to ask, how on earth you've dragged that meme edgelord Chris DeHarde to guest? Good question. Chris was always a fan of I think it was RJ that suggested getting Chris on the show. Like, he knew Chris had done a lot of independent work as a freelancer for the Indianapolis Star. So obviously IndyCar focused, and first and foremost, he's a general fan of Formula One and cars in general, like NASCAR, for instance. But I think it was always RJ's suggestion that he got Chris in, and when Chris is just one of these guys that's just got a lot of humour in him, a lot of toilet humour. And if I'm being honest, he fits us pretty down to the ground, so I can't really argue with that. I'm not the biggest fan of all his humour. I'm a little bit grown for that now, to be honest. But again, he's a good fit for IndyCar and what we do with IndyCar. So, you know, he's not on every show for that very reason, but, you know, in small doses it works, certainly. Joey, I went to MotoGP night when it had Scott Redding, and another one when it had Bradley Smith and Michael Laverty. Amazingly, when I went to Cadwell Park last year, he remembered me because of that. Oh, that's awesome. Great story. Hi, Warwick. Good to see you. Jim Rosenthal was decent. Rosenthal was just a solid all-round sports anchor in general for ITV when he was there for 97 to 05. I remember watching him. I remember watching him in it, and yeah, Steve Ryder was solid. I mean, remember, Steve Ryder did Grandstand, so he had a ton of experience already. Like, going into F1 was piss easy for Ryder. He had all that experience underneath him already. He was just a good anchor all round. Best modern day F1 commentator? Jack Nicholls? Alex Jakes? Like, I think Alex Jakes should be in the main seat for Sky. That shouldn't be a controversial opinion. Alex Jakes is the best F1 open wheel commentator out there right now, I think. I think he's excellent all around. He does every series well. He's got a good sense of humour. He's modern. He's good for a laugh. I really like him. I think Alex Jakes is the best in the biz right now. I think he would be excellent in David Croft's chair as a lead play-by-play man. Jack Nicholls, who does BBC 5 Live's coverage as well, is also very, very good. And they've got the very underrated Jolyon Palmer as a pundit there a lot of the time as well. Like, I know it's easy to mock Jolyon as a driver because his F1 career was kind of a meme, but Palmer is an excellent, insightful pundit on the BBC and where I've seen him, and he's a guy that is very, very good at it. So, you know, by all means, like, I would love to see a team of something like Alex Jakes or Jack Nicholls alongside someone like Jolyon Palmer. I think as a good, younger commentary team for the future, I think that's the way you want to go. And if you've not seen Alex Jakes' monologue to open the Italian Grand Prix last year, the first Formula 2 race after Antoine Hubert's tragic passing, I highly recommend you do. It's beautifully put together. Have you come across any interesting racing books or articles recently? I'm not a big reader. I wish I was. I'll get back to you on that one, Owen, because I've got books on the go that I'm trying to get through, like Will Powers and Mark Webber's autobiography, but I'm not the biggest of readers. I'm getting around to that, I promise. Thoughts on Channel 4's coverage? Well, a lot of it is, like, based on what, you know, the BBC had, because it's a lot of the same people. But they have two excellent things going for it. Steve Jones has actually blown me away as an anchor. Jones gets it. Like, he's one of these guys that just because he's not the biggest F1 fan on paper, he can put together a tight broadcast, not take himself too seriously, which, my God, is an underrated thing as a Formula 1 broadcaster, because everybody is stuck up and uptight and full of crazy shit. Steve Jones is loose. I like his style. I like the fact he's a bit more laid back. I like the fact he doesn't take himself too seriously, and he has good banter with, again, Jordan and Coulthard. He reminds me a lot of Humphrey in his style and how he presents himself. And they've also got the single best broadcaster / interviewer out of anyone back there, and that's Lee McKenzie. Like, Lee McKenzie can do it all. She can anchor, she can interview, she can be in the pit lane, she can be in the paddock interviewing people. The most versatile F1 broadcaster out there right now, bar none. Like, Mackenzie is bloody brilliant. And a shining example of how good a sports broadcaster. She actually does the rugby as well, and she's generally esteemed in high regard there as well. I think Mackenzie is the most versatile broadcaster on any of the major F1 networks we've had in the last 10 years. She was excellent with the BBC, and she's been excellent at Channel 4. And it was a damn shame we nearly lost her at the end of last year, given that she was going to quit, I think, to do rugby full time. She didn't. She was back with Channel 4's paddock last year, and I hope it sticks around, because she's excellent at it. She's really, really good at it. Like I said, you can have Mackenzie do anything on the broadcast, and she's great. So, that is, you want versatility when you put in a crew together. Certainly. Yeah. I wouldn't say Ben Edwards is underrated, Vic, because he's been around for ages. Like, Ben Edwards has been around since for donkey's years as an overall commentator. Like, he did IndyCar in the bloody 90s. I think he did Champ Car. He's been around for yonks. Which I think I like Ben Edwards. He doesn't do anything wrong. He's a solid play-by-play man, by all means. Maybe underrated's the wrong word. I think maybe underappreciated might be the word to go with instead. Hi, Zoe. She texted me during this. It's a tradition. Zoe has a knack of texting me whenever I'm streaming. I don't know why she does. She just does. I don't know why. She just has a knack for it. Yeah, besides that, everything is going well from a technical standpoint. This is excellent news. OBS is reporting not a single dropped frame, which is very promising to see. We've been online now for 55 minutes, and we've not had a single frame lost yet, which is excellent news. The audio is now better, because like I said, we've got it hooked up on mono on both sides now, so that's great. So you can listen with headphones without it coming across as awkward. Yeah, everything's going great. Thoughts on Guido van der Gaard's humour? Overrated. Says sorry, Rao. Not a big fan, personally. I just think... I'm not... The thing is, for me, is that, that sort of style of humour has a limited shelf life. And, Guido taking the piss, out of himself when he got kicked out of Sauber, when Sauber hired, 4 drivers at once, was hilarious. But then it got into the point where he was just sitting there taking the piss every single Grand Prix. It just got a bit stale for me after a while. Because he's just... You know what it is? He's one of those guys that's not as funny as he thinks he is. And that's never a good trait to have in a comedian. Or someone who thinks he is one, personally. Again, just my opinion. Warwick, so Channel 4 has the better team of presenters, and yet Sky gets exclusive live coverage with the worst lineup. Yeah. I know it's not fair, Warwick, and I know it's shit, but that's just how it's always been. When Sky F1 was created in 2012, Sky have got oodles of cash. They were always going to throw dollars at cherry-picking the best broadcasters they could possibly afford for their network. They snagged Ted Kravitz. They snagged Martin Brundle. They snagged Karun Chandhok. Damon Hill had done work for the BBC before. They got Damon Hill in full time. Like I said, Brundle was the big name. I know off the record that they were willing to give Brundle a big 6-figure salary every season to make him the face of their coverage, because Brundle had done, what was it, 10 to 15, 10, 12 years with ITV and then BBC as a broadcaster. Brundle followed the money. I don't blame him. So, they cherry-picked who they wanted off that panel. So the BBC and then Channel 4 had to kind of start over. BBC kept Mackenzie on. She's great, like I mentioned earlier. They had to get a new anchor. Susie Perry was okay. Clearly much better in bikes. She was way better in... for me, anyway, she was much better as a MotoGP broadcaster as an anchor there than she was at Formula 1, where I think she was a little bit more lost in the shuffle. And I think Eddie took over a bit too much on that one. That's why she blocked me on Twitter, which I thought was quite funny, because I said, look, I'm not a big fan of Perry's coverage. And then she was like, well, why did you watch then? And then she just blocked me, and I'm like, well, okay then, fine, you know. It's whatever. But if it was a Channel 4 race that had live coverage alongside Sky F1, I will choose the Channel 4 broadcast every time. Because there's less people on there that annoy me. Like, the only one on Channel 4 that annoys me, really, is Eddie Jordan. And only because his predictionometer is the same as a batter in baseball who bats 150. It's not very useful to you. You know? It's the equivalent of cricket of having an average of like 17 or something. It's just not very useful. But yet people still hail him like some sort of pundit oracle. Jordan doesn't know what he's fucking talking about most of the goddamn time. But besides that, I will happily watch Channel 4 over Sky F1. The only problem is that Channel 4 keep Mark Webber on the payroll and he's a twat. So, it's problematic. Yeah, general thoughts on the future of the broadcasting, says Kwame. Hi Kwame, nice to see you. Not much to add really. The F1 network itself has got a lot of talented youngsters in there, like Will Buxton, like Rosanna Tennant, who I used to work with at Pole Position F1 a little bit. I used to do a lot of collaborations with her on their old YouTube channel, Pole Position P1. She was very good on there, and I'm glad she's now working for F1 directly. And you know, she does like the post-race interviews and pit lane reporting during Formula 2. She's great. There's no doubt about that. Buxton, I don't agree with Buxton on a lot of his stuff, but I think he gets it. He's a solid broadcaster as well. And as I mentioned, like, the future is bright. Alex Jakes is going to be in the F1 World Feed seat one day. I am absolutely certain of it. He's great, and I hope Jolyon Palmer and Jack Nichols continue to fly the flag. I think they're the best younger guys in the bunch. I really do. I think they're all great. I was listening to Jack Nichols when he was commentating on Formula Sim Racing's YouTube channel back in like 2012. Like, that's how long I've been following Jack Nichols' work, and he's brilliant. And he will ace everything he does. He's done a fantastic job with Dario on Formula E. So, yeah, you know, it's, so yeah, that's how I look at it anyway. I'll talk about The Last Dance in a bit, Kwame. Yeah, Rosberg-Hamilton rivalry, where Sky lost a lot of respect because they constantly put down Nico. Yeah, well, let's just say Sky Sports F1 knew where their bread was buttered. I've said it for years, and people have always said I was an idiot for thinking this, but in the eyes of Sky's producers, their lowest common denominator is Lewis Hamilton. And that's not it's not a wrong thing to say, because Hamilton is the biggest star in Formula 1 by a mile, especially in their home country of the United Kingdom. So, of course, you know, to a degree, they're right. But when it starts having a negative impact on their broadcasts, that's when I have a problem with it. That's when I start to go, ugh. And that's when I started to dislike what F1's coverage had become, where they were just clearly being motivated by narratives and buzz topics and saying whatever would draw heat off the internet. And that is not a healthy way of thinking about it. I think Webber's a class act. This is... It's a little bit on a personal level, Ralph, if I'm being honest. If you weren't on Twitter towards the end of last year, basically, Mark Webber put down a tweet that was based on a inaccurate report from the BBC saying, and this is going to be a sensitive topic, so, you know, act accordingly. But it was a topic that was not based in fact. The BBC News had published about an article saying that people that had turned trans were thinking about transitioning back to their original gender of birth, or how they perceived gender of birth, or how they identified at birth, basically. And Mark Webber put down a joke that I considered to be transphobic. He said, and I quote, "Oh, I can't keep up with all the terms these days." And he clearly meant it as a joke. And I just said to him, and I quote, "That's really not funny, and it comes across as transphobic. This really isn't that hard to understand." And then Webber retweeted me. And of course, given Webber is very popular on social media, especially in Australia, of course, his home country, and whatnot, he got into a pissing contest between some of his fans who insisted on telling me that I was wrong and that, his joke was funny, actually. I laughed, ha ha ha. And I basically had to put a put down on him, saying that, you're acting like a dickhead, basically, that, you're acting like a transphobe. And I don't believe in that. I'm a firm believer in trans rights. I'm a firm believer that people should be treated how they want to be treated. And he retweeted a factually inaccurate article that was dangerous, and it was verified by the children's charity Mermaids that, this is just wrong in every way. And then Mark Webber's joking about it, and it went, me basically blasting and went viral. And I addressed it on the podcast a week after. I didn't appreciate the fact that a lot of his fans went after my ex-girlfriend at the time as well, Tiff, and I wasn't best pleased about that. It made me very angry I'm not normally that angry on the internet. I've tried to keep it down now because I used to be a lot more controversial when I was younger. But long story short, in my perceived opinion, Mark Webber was transphobic. I called him out on it, and he didn't like it. So I literally called him a twat, and I said that, I hope you lose your job on Channel 4 F1, because I don't think they should be promoting people with opinions like yours on their network. And like most things on the internet, it was angry for about a day or two, and then it all blew over, because we have very short attention spans on the internet. That's just how we are. So yeah, that's why me and Mark Webber don't see eye to eye. I think he's a bit of a cunt, personally. And guys in the chat, we are not going to start generalising the Australians for it. We're better than that, people. Trust me, being British right now and the way that our political opinions have largely been broadcast in the last few years, i.e. regarding messages on buses and how we are generally as a country, I don't think we're in a position to talk right now, personally. So all I'm going to say is, let's not go down this road, please. It's a rabbit hole, and I don't believe in, honestly, we could make stereotypical jokes about other countries till the cows come home, but being in Britain right now, I am in no position to be on a high horse. None whatsoever. So let's, not do that. Thanks. I'm all for educated discussion and whatnot, but I don't like generalising. I think it's generally quite lazy, personally. So I prefer it if we didn't do that. Right. Did you like ITV's old coverage? I've been watching old races recently, and I found them good, even though they were. Yeah, I was trying to. Yeah, you know what's funny? You're right. I actually really liked ITV's coverage. Fun fact, the very first intro we had on Motorsport 101 was the old ITV F1 theme from 1998 that Jamiroquai made. Mostly because I'm a massive Jamiroquai fan, and I felt like that was a cool intro. So, yeah, I was a fan of their ITV coverage. And then you're right, when it got to 2006, when Lewis Hamilton debuted in GP2, they were promoting the shit out of Lewis Hamilton. The last 3 years ITV had coverage until 2008. It became the Lewis Hamilton show very, very quickly. And, it was what it was. I understand why they did it. Look, if you're a British F1 fan at the time, the status of Brits in the sport was not in the best of hands. Jenson Button was in a upper midfield Honda team that was never going to win anything, but it was an okay guy. Button finally won his first Grand Prix in 2006. We didn't have any other prospects. You look at those old ITV intros, once Hamilton joins in 2007, with that Lift Me Up Moby theme they had as an intro, everybody else was in shit positions. Jensen was in a mediocre BAR Honda team. You had Anthony Davidson, who was driving for Super Aguri, dead on arrival. And you had David Coulthard, who was already cooked. Cooked had joined a brand new Red Bull team that, again, was never going to win anything on old V10s. So Hamilton at the time was virtually all we had until Button had that miracle year in 2009. So I can understand why people were excited about Hamilton. I get it to a degree. But, didn't mean it was great to watch, personally. So, yeah. Steve Ryder's shaky hand when holding the mic was funny. Yeah, they loved them some Lewis. And to be fair, a lot of people did. I was bought Hamilton's book as a birthday present when I was 17 in sixth form. Everybody jumped on the Lewis wagon because he was British, he was fast, and he was classy back then. Everybody liked that. So, I get it. I get why it happened. So, even if that intro from ITV is kind of problematic, why is there a Chinese person doing a dance in the intro? Why is there women and snakes in it? It's like they were trying to discount James Bond. It was really weird. I still like the theme song and I like the nostalgia behind it, but you look back at it now in 2020 and you go, did they really put that out? Did somebody really greenlight that? David Coulthard in a tuxedo thinking he's James Bond. That was actually a thing. That was something we did. I thought that was quite funny, more than anything else. Show Anthony Davidson some respect. Look, Davidson's brilliant. He's world endurance champion, Anthony Davidson, at the end of the day. But he drove a shit car. That was a glorified Arrows, that Super Aguri. We all knew it was going to be a shitter. Hi, Kuba. Nice to see you. Mr. Random Guy saying 13... God, yeah, I remember that now, yeah. 13 million people watched the 2008 Brazilian Grand Prix in the UK. Yeah, you're absolutely right, mate. It was the most watched Formula 1 Grand Prix in the history of British television. It was a season finale. A British driver could have won a world title for the first time in, 12 years. It was a very good time slot, Sunday dinner time, because it was the Brazilian Grand Prix, and it's always at about 6 PM in the UK. The time window's very friendly. Everyone's sitting down for a family roast on Sunday night. It was the perfect storm. Title finale. British driver had a seriously good chance to win it. Great time slot. All of that. It was the perfect storm. They will never top 13 million ever again. Not unless F1 goes free to air again, and that will not happen. Sky are trying to tie down whatever they can get. So, discount James Bond is very F1. Very true, Rory. Let's have a look. Oh! Dom asking, yeah. What are your, like, genuine opinions on Steve Smith? I don't think you've ever said. Oh, really? Cricket time here, folks. For the record, I am largely okay with Steve Smith. There. I said it. Happy now? Look. I don't think... Okay, it's impossible to talk about Steve Smith without mentioning Sandpapergate. I don't believe to this day that Steve Smith knew nothing about what had happened as captain. As captain, surely he knew that something stinky was going on. And, you know, I don't think he was the worst offender in that Australian camp. I think it's pretty obvious that the main culprits were Cameron Bancroft, who obviously committed it all, and David Warner, who obviously orchestrated the whole thing. I think Smith took the brunt of it because he was captain, and I think that was always a little bit unfair on Smith. You know, so I can't stand Warner. He's a twat, but he's a bloody brilliant batsman. Again, Cameron Bancroft's never really gone anywhere as a batsman anyway, but Smith took the brunt of it given he was captain, which I can understand. Because again, any talk about him being naive to what had happened, I think, was crazy. But look, I'm not denying the fact the man is a bloody brilliant cricketer. Like, holy shit, he might be the best test batsman ever. Like, he is high up there in the all-time list for test cricketers. Like, he's not as great with the white ball. I still think that Virat Kohli is the best all-round cricketer in the world from red and white ball status. But as a test cricketer, Smith's the best batsman of this generation. There's no doubt about that. Like, purely off red ball stuff, Smith is a monster. And he decimated us during... You know, Australia does not keep the Ashes if it wasn't for Steve Smith. Easily, you know? So... And by all accounts, he seems like a genuinely nice, if a bit quirky bloke. There's a bit of English in him, given he's got an English mum, so, you know, I can sense the English in him. And, like, I think the hate we have for Australia in a cricketing standpoint has always been a bit more pantomime than everything else. Look, I hold my hands up. I loved Shane Warne. He bloody destroyed us as a bowler, but Shane Warne was an all-round, likeable, charismatic fella that didn't mind taking the piss out of himself. You know? So, I've never had the beef with the Aussies that a lot of people have had. I like their presence. You know? So, that's me on Steve Smith. I think he's okay. I respect Steve Smith a lot as a cricketer. You know, again, I think he got a lot of the hopelessly naive treatment when he was involved in Sandpapergate, but I don't have it out for him like I do with David Warner, who is a wanker. So yeah, there you go. That's my full Steve Smith opinion right there. Catching up with the chat real quick. Ashy Boy, yeah, DTM's dead, mate. I think BMW's statement regarding the whole thing was more like, well, why didn't Audi tell us we were going to quit? Like, we would have quit too, basically. So, you know, I generally think that, you know, I think they were always going to jettison themselves out of the series, and I think Gerhard Berger's got an awful lot to answer for. But I think, as we know it, DTM is dead. I don't think there's any salvaging that unless there's a radical shift in what cars they use. But for me, I think DTM's dead, which is just a shame. It's sad because it's a massive part of the European culture of motorsport, and it's a real shame if the whole series goes tits up like that, basically. I I don't know which country's the most popular for F1, Mr. Random Guy. I think it might be China in terms of sheer viewership. I know it's very popular in France as well. But pound for pound, I think Britain's right up there. Sorry, by the way, just I wasn't stiffing anything. It's just my got my Yankee candle going on here right now. It's lovely. Something again my ex got me into was just using Yankee candles like all the time. Got a cinnamon one over here as well. It's bloody gorgeous. So good. Let's have a look. Oh no, he didn't see me there. Like your comments, Gabriella. I like that. Did Montoya have a bad attitude when he was in F1? Yes. Rorik. Yeah. From what I know and from what I've read in magazines and interviews, generally speaking, Montoya had a piss poor attitude, and that was a bigger problem than any of his talent ever showed. He basically drove himself out of Williams because he fell out with senior engineers there. I remember reading about it in Evo magazine back when I was like this tall. I remember specifically interviews talking about how he called one of his engineers an arse biter, basically, for example, and yeah, he had a bad attitude. He wanted to fight people half the time. He was very abrasive. He swore at people all the time. He wasn't well liked. He wasn't, like, again, all the talent in the world, Montoya, but just a hothead. A hothead who should have known better, quite frankly, you know? And, yeah, it's a shame what happened to him because, again, he was better than his attitude ever gave off, as proven by his time in IndyCar. And, in general, he's a very talented racing driver in a magnitude of series, but I'm glad that seemingly died down as he's gotten older. Doesn't help when Brennan's ruining iRacing for him. I see what you did there. Just checking my phone real quick, guys. Just a sec. But yeah, keep them coming, guys. Keep the questions coming and whatnot. I seem to love athletes with bad attitudes. Look, man. For all said and done, like, sport needs villains. Like, sport needs villains. It needs anti-heroes. It needs people that don't march to the beat of everyone's drum. I think one of the key reasons we love sport is because it's got pantomime villains in it. It draws emotions out of people. Not everybody wants the squeaky clean, you know, drives with respect guy. Honestly, the villains tend to be more interesting. And we like that, you know? So, I get it. I totally get that. Look, growing up as an athletics fan, Maurice Green was one of my favourite athletes, and no one liked him. He was cocky, he was arrogant, he'd have his tongue sticking out every 2 seconds. I loved Maurice Green as an anti-hero sort of sprinting figure when he was the best in the world at one point, you know, so, you know. All bias aside, do you think Alonso would beat Vettel in the same car? Maybe. Maybe so. I've got to be careful talking about Alonso because a lot of people seem to jump on me whenever I do, but I said it before. you could make a viable case that Fernando Alonso was the best F1 driver in the world, pound for pound, for maybe 8 years. Between 2005 and 2012, you could make a case that pound for pound, Alonso was the best driver in the world. You know, so 2005 wins world title, 2006 wins world title, 2007 was 1 point away from winning the title with McLaren. 08 and 09, Renault wasn't a competitive car. 2010, nearly won the title, just lost out to Vettel at the end. 2011 was the year where you probably start having doubts because Vettel blew the field out that year. 2012, close title fight, very evenly matched cars. Vettel came out on top by 3 points. So maybe until 2013, you could make a case that Alonso was the pound for pound #1 driver in the world. I can't argue with that. And if you said that to me, I'd be like, yeah, you've got a case. So I can't sit there and say with a clear conscience that Alonso would have no chance against Vettel in the same car. They were evenly matched on a lot. So, you know, I think it would be very close. It would depend a lot as to how that car is set up and who can get the most out of their resources. Because that is probably Alonso's ultimate weakness as a driver, was that he was poor at running teams. Vettel, when the rear end of the car was planted and then a car that would suit his needs, Vettel was virtually unbeatable. And that is a legitimate X factor that a lot of drivers just don't have. So there's cases you can make for both, certainly. If sport needs villains, where is the damn villain in that poor New Zealand team? They weren't villains, we just made them one because we're England and we have to win, Dom. That's how it is. The villain was the rulebook. If you really want to go there. Like, the World Cup for England was a story of redemption with Ben Stokes and coming back after the nightclub incident, and Jofra Archer, who was this close to another mass immigration debate. You know, oh my god, Joffre's in this team? He's not English, he's from Barbados. How dare he be able to take part, even though he's got an English mum? You know, etc, etc. If Joffre doesn't win that Super Over, we're talking about why he's even in the team, even though I've always made the argument Jofra Archer was England's best player in that World Cup. Took 20 wickets at an average of 24, I think it was. Like, Jofre was a monster. The only other guys that I think were better in that England team during that World Cup was probably Johnny Bairstow. That we don't talk about enough during that World Cup run, you know? But it is what it is. Jumping into that, Colin asking how do you recommend someone get into cricket? Get a Sky subscription and hope for the best. Because there might not be any cricket till like September. So, fingers crossed. Again, lockdown and all that. How different would Hamilton's career have been if he didn't get his first title in 08? I honestly don't think it would have changed that much, Warwick, because Hamilton was always in or around the top 2 or 3 pound for pound anyway. In an alternate dimension, he doesn't win in 08, but he wins in 07 because he was really unlucky to have beached it in the gravel in China on a wet track and then having an electrical problem in Brazil that compromised his race heavily. Hamilton was the best driver in the field in 07, pound for pound. No doubt about that. So if he doesn't win 08, maybe he wins 07 instead. And Hamilton won 20 races for McLaren. 20. If he retired, even without a championship in 2012, he's already one of the best British racing drivers ever. Like, of the all-time Brits list, probably only Stewart and Mansell and Clark would be above him. So, would he have not gotten the Mercedes seat? He probably still would have been a top contender for it. After Schumacher was already cooked by 2012 anyway. So, you know, I don't think it would have changed that much, because I think there's a lot of avenues where Hamilton still could have won a world title. Even 2012, he lost 75 points from race-leading positions during that season. So, you know, by all means, Hamilton was great when he needed to be. The only real bad year Hamilton had to that point was 2011, by his standards, because he got way too heated in the Lewis Hamilton-Felipe Massa blood feud that went down, you know? Oh god, yeah, absolutely big part of the game is being in the best car, Rory. Look, being in the right car in the right time will determine your career and legacy in Formula One. There is no doubt in my mind about that. Without doubt, the biggest factor is being in the right place at the right time. Timing is everything. It's probably why Nico Hülkenberg had his career peter out rather than him being a top tier potential world champion. Because Hülkenberg had the talent. He has the most glittering junior resume of any driver of the last 15 years. Easily. He was pretty good his first season at Williams. Lost his seat to Pastor. Came back with Force India. Had a pretty good 2012. Had an outstanding 2013 at Sauber. Goes back to Force India. And then he's kind of level pegging with Sergio Perez. And then he just never goes anywhere after that. He was on the brink of taking Raikkonen's seat at Ferrari, but then he got passed over for Raikkonen when 2013 came around. Hülkenberg was arguably the number one midfielder on the grid at that point in time. So he was damned if he did and damned if he didn't, especially after he had a golden chance in 2013 because like the number one guy on the board was Sergio Perez, and he ended up going to McLaren, and it didn't work out for him over there. So, like, Hülkenberg could have absolutely gotten a top-tier seat. Without a doubt. No question. Why do you think Raikkonen tanked so hard in 08, especially for 6 races mid-season? He started and ended well, but literally scored no points for about 4 races in a row. I don't know, man. I think around that sort of time, I think Raikkonen was told that they were going all in on Felipe Massa to win the champ. I think he was told by Monza, we're all in on Massa for the championship, and I don't think Raikkonen ever warmed kindly to that. I think that's probably part of the factor in that one. What if Red Bull promoted Verne instead of Kvyat? Say Verne then outscored Ricciardo in 2015, but then didn't go off and punt Vettel in Russia. What would happen to Verne and Verstappen's careers? Verne was never going to get the Q jump because Verne was not as good at Toro Rosso than Ricciardo was. You know, as far as I'm concerned, like, Verne was always a shade below Ricciardo. So when it came to guys getting jumped up through the queue, Ricciardo was always going to be first in line. You know? So Ricciardo deserved the seat in 2014 when it came up. And then Ricciardo would go on to do great things in that car. Kvyat is an interesting one. Kvyat was pretty good when he was at Toro Rosso in the first place, so I get why Red Bull pumped him up quickly. Red Bull like to promote their own quickly when the opportunity comes up. But we wouldn't have had Verne win 2 titles in Formula E, so I'm actually quite grateful that Verne didn't work out in F1, because his loss was Formula E's gain. He was great in Formula E from day one. Something that's genuinely quite hard to do. It's hard to walk into Formula E and be fast immediately, you know? So, I don't think... I think Verne would have been a solid midfielder in the Red Bull. I think he would have been similar to Kvyat, but I don't think he would have been a Ricciardo-level talent, if that makes sense. And I think I don't think anything changes with Verstappen. Verstappen was always the golden goose of the academy when they brought him in 2015. You know, so for me, I think Verstappen was always going to get that seat because Mercedes were going after Verstappen around that sort of time as well. The difference is that Red Bull could have offered Verstappen a race seat immediately and Mercedes couldn't have done. And if Merckx had gotten Verstappen when he was 15 years old, there's no way he would have made it to F1. Because Merckx would have told him, go do Formula 3 for a couple of years, go do Formula 2, or whatever. And they wouldn't have bumped him up so quick, because Merckx are too good to gamble on younger talent like that. You know, so as far as I'm concerned, like, Verstappen wouldn't have worked out if he was at Mercedes. At least that's my opinion anyway. So yeah, that's how I look at it anyway. Yeah, Richard, that's the one time that that Eddie Jordan got a prediction right, and he was dining on that reputation for years. Do you think MSTF1 and Cook Productions will come back? If not, will there be any other like them? No. I knew Matt, and I still talk to Chris semi-occasionally. Matt vanished off the face of the internet. I think around 2018 started in Formula 1. What I will say, I think I can't speak on Matt's behalf, but from what I could tell and gather, I think Matt was a bit sick of the F1 community in general, and I can understand why, because he was getting asked relentlessly all the goddamn time, when's the next episode coming out? When's the next episode coming out? When's the next episode coming out? You know, people were hooked on his show, and rightly so. It ballooned up. It went from 0 to like 12,000 subs like that. Yeah, he would have, if he was on YouTube right now still doing content, he'd have had 150,000 subs by now. Easy. But he quit. I think it was partly that. I think it was partly because getting F1 coverage unrestricted on YouTube is always going to be difficult. The licensing behind it, and obviously the debate of fair use, is always going to be a stickler. It's always going to be a hurdle. It's always going to be a load of bollocks. So it's never going to be ideal. And you're right, he's now got his own podcast called Controller Disconnected, where he talks a lot about game design. But he just keeps himself to himself. We still follow each other on Instagram, but I've not spoken to Matt properly in about 3 years. It's sad because he was a really nice guy. From the time I spoke to him, I think a combination of copyright, his place in the fans that were pestering him all the time, and I know he fell out with a couple of close friends that I know. Back when we had something called like Race Car Twitter, there was a lot of us as close friends on the internet, kind of disintegrated, and Matt, I think, was one of the reasons as to why that happened. So yeah. As for Chris quit to be a musician, you know, and music was always his passion, a lot more than race car reviews. He's a good kid, you know, by all accounts. You know, he's still in and around certain places because he's now Haley Mulch's boyfriend. But, you know, he's not on Twitter very much these days or anything like that. He's a bit on Instagram and whatnot, but most people now know of him through Haley, because Haley is popular on Twitter. She's a brilliant motorsport artist and designer, and she's designed them a cover for the Kick. So, you know, it's a shame because they were both really, really good at what they were doing. They were both very talented guys. I don't think there'll be anyone that will come along. I think the new trend now with F1 opinion videos is like reading Wikipedia articles and turning them into videos. Oh, is that a controversial opinion? Like, I think the guys who know who I'm talking about, I'm not going to name names, but let's just say there's certain opinion-based F1 YouTubers that I think don't do their homework an awful lot, and I think they just, like, read off Wikipedia pages and turn them into videos, because it's very easy. You can pump them out very quickly when you're doing things like that, and they're now the new in thing, alongside the usual big influencers like Arav, like Ben, like Jimmy Broadbent, like Super GT, etc., etc. So, yeah, I think the game is a bit tricky on that sense. I think it's changed an awful lot in the last few years. I don't know if there's a place for pure race reviews on there anymore. I think, you know, it is what it is. Like I said, I still think it's going to be dominated by the gamers, because gaming is just a more popular market in general. I have no doubt in my mind that Ben, Arav, Broadbent will all be over 500k by the end of the year. They'll all get gold badges eventually. They'll get up there, because they were the first. They were the guys who kept doing what they were doing. You know, once YouTube gives you that shot in the arm, if you can keep making videos every day, you're gonna blow up, and that's what's happened to them. I mean, I'm just looking at. Let me pull up real quick. How many subs have these guys got now? I'm just pulling up another window on YouTube. Hang on. Ara's got 359,000. Ben's got 430,000. And Jimmy's got 472. So they're all hovering around 400k or better. Jimmy's on TSN in Canada. Wow, that's awesome. Shout out to Jay and Dan. But yeah, like I said, I think they're the three kingpins of this community now. I mean, I use that in inverted commas because it stopped being that quite some time ago. And you know, you've got the guys underneath them, like they're all trying to pump Veloce up now. That's genuinely done good work, and the race, you know, are doing their thing as well. Like, if I could make videos like they could, I reckon I'd still be a big name, or a decent-ish name. Like, walking away from Harrison 101 was one of the hardest things I've ever done in my life. And I just couldn't commit to doing videos every day. Like, and it's hard to, you know, keep that level of consistency going. If you can do that, like an Arav or a Ben or a Super GT or a Jimmy Broadbent, then more power to you. If you can treat it like a full-time job, then I salute you. I really do. But, like, the reason I quit was because I was miserable. Like, I don't know if I was depressed, officially, as a diagnosis, but towards the end of my time before I quit, I was fucking miserable making videos. I lost the motivation. I got too wrapped up in the numbers, and it was just shit. So, you know, if you want to do it, great. Knock yourself out. By all means. Like, but, you know, it's an acquired taste. It takes a level of dedication that is almost full-time job-like. And if that's if you're in it for the money, prepared to be disappointed. Prepared to be disappointed is what I would tell you. I love that I mentioned people in the chat and you guys knew exactly who I was talking about. Yeah. Opinions on WTF1. I like them a lot, but I miss the ex-Matty G side of Matt. Let's just say Matt had some growing up to do. I will... It's because he's had to be more professional. Like, his role and what he did on ex-Matty G would not fly with a television network. Personal opinion, okay, this is going to be a bit controversial again, but I will say my piece on this. Me and Matt used to be very good friends. I'd worked with Matt before. I'd been on his channel before. I was one of about 50 people he actually followed on Twitter. Me and him went way back in our F1 days, back when he was a league racer, playing F1 on a pad. And he was at one point was basically the best pad playing F1 player in the world. Not a lot of people know that now, because obviously there's a lot of newer fans and newer YouTube viewers that are in this space now. Going back, I think it was 2016, where I wrote a controversial article on the website, motorsport101.com. It was a challenge I was doing where I was writing 30 written articles in 30 days. And I think it was something like day 28, there was an explosive debate about women in motorsport, because I think friend of the show, Remy Connors, noticed that motorsport.com had a picture section of its website that had a bunch of grid girl pictures in it. It was quite disturbing that, you know, people had gone out of their way to, like, literally point their cameras up women's skirts and take photos and then just keep them in a storage bank on the internet. Remy put that out on the internet to get people's attention. She started a petition about getting this removed, and I was one of the people that was quite loud about it, because there was an explosive debate with certain members of the F1 community on YouTube who was like, oh, what's the big deal? It's just women in knickers, and, you know, it's like lycra, and, you know, it's all great, it's sexy, it's part of the show, etc., etc. And I made the mistake of writing in the heat of the moment. I wrote my daily article for the day talking about that debate and putting myself out there. It was a very punchy article, and I went too far in 2 counts. One of the things I did was that I didn't name drop this person, but this person knew I was writing about them. And it was a woman who is now a very prolific member of Dorna's editing team for MotoGP. Someone that I considered a friend and someone I looked up to. And I used them as an example in a negative light regarding women in motorsport, and she berated me via Twitter DM. And she was right. She was 100% in the right. I was wrong in how I wrote it. And me and her don't talk anymore. And it was a bridge burnt, and I will forever regret that. It's one of the very few regrets I do have over my time on YouTube as a full-time YouTuber, was that. And I'm not proud of it. The apologising piece is still up on my website. I've never gotten rid of it. It's there if you really want to read it that badly. That was the first mistake. The other mistake that I made was that I took a jab at Tiamat Marduk in the post for no good reason. I thought it was just a joke. I mentioned his receding hairline. And I mean, look, I guess we can joke about it now because he really has gone bald, and even he takes the piss out of his own hairline in his videos now. But back then, he took it to heart, and there was a bit of a firestorm on Twitter because a couple of his mates had passed the article on for him to read. Ben unfollowed me on Twitter and claimed he didn't know who I was. That was inherently untrue because we were friends. We both grew up in the same space. I remember asking him for advice when he was blowing up in Australia on views, and I was struggling a little bit. We got along. We were friends. We were sub to each other's channels, and again, he took it to heart. I don't blame him for taking it to heart. It was a personal jab. I can't blame him for taking that out on me. The funny thing is, I think he's still subbed to this channel as we speak, so he might even be watching this. I've always extended the olive branch. If he wants to talk to me, he can. But the point is that when I put that article out there, in the comments of the original post calling me out, Maddie G put in a comment along the lines of "What a massive see you next Tuesday." Immediately unfollowed me and didn't even want to hear an explanation from me. That hurt because I considered Matt a friend, and this was just when Matt was really starting to blow up as the OTT YouTube Championship, comedy guy that got to like 50,000 subs, rage tweets in the kitchen, etc., etc. So for me and Matt, it's somewhat personal as to why, I can't say I like him per se, because the way he handled our friendship, I think, was not great. I would have thought he would have liked to have seeked me out first, personally, but he didn't, and that's his prerogative. We've not spoken personally since. I've seen his name crop up a few times since. I mean, look, I don't follow WTF1. They were plagiarists in their earlier days on Twitter. They were copying other people's jokes and content without giving credit. I called them out for it and they blocked me on Twitter, so I can't read their content on Twitter, which is where I get most of my news from. I've never watched them on YouTube. I know Matty was in hot water a couple of years ago when he called Nico Rosberg a pussy for not defending his championship when he won it in 2016, and he had to basically walk it back, and he gave the generic "sorry if you're offended" explanation, which, for a man that's now a journalist, he should know better. But it is what it is. He's doing a great job on the virtual races now as a commentator and pundit. He knows the games. That's his element, and more power to him. Look, he's a good guy deep down, and I have to take a level of accountability for how it all ended, because I was wrong in what I did, but I also don't like the way I didn't like the way they handled it. And yeah, he did actually go on to meet Nico Rosberg. All I'm saying is he's very lucky Nico never read that original post. So, it is what it is. I went into a lot of detail about that, didn't I? So yeah. It is what it is. That's my relationship with those two super popular people on F1 Twitter. Again, I can't lie, it's mostly my fault. If I'd have taken a bit more care and diligence in what I'd written originally, it would never have gone that way. But I've got to hold my hands up on that one. So yeah, it is what it is. Sorry if anybody wanted to ask anything else in the downtime there, but look, if you ask me an honest question about my time on F1 Twitter or F1 YouTube, I will always give you an honest answer. I have nothing to hide. I have regrets. I have made mistakes. I don't talk from a position of arrogance. I had a decent following on YouTube. It wasn't elite. It hadn't been elite since 2016 or something like that. So I don't look at myself as being better than anybody else. I just see myself as me. I don't play a character on here. What you see with me is what you get. And I'm not perfect by any stretch of the imagination. And I don't... The biggest mistake I could ever make as a person would be to tell you otherwise. You know? So... It's 2020. We've all moved on. Life goes on. If they ever wanted to extend the olive branch, they know where to find me. But that won't happen. They've moved on to bigger and better things in their lives, and I wish them all the best in that. I've never met Jimmer, no. I don't know Jimmer on a personal level. Jimmer shot up out of nowhere, Charlie. You know, I don't mingle with a lot of the top tier F1 guys anymore. Like, the only guy of the real big hitters on F1 YouTube that I would genuinely consider a friend is probably Arav. Because me and Arav used to live very local to each other. We've known each other for about 7 years. He lives just down the road from me in Southall. Before he went to university and got his degree. If I DM'd Arav, I know he would answer my DM. Let's put it to you that way. You know, if I called him, he would answer the call. But I don't really mingle with any of the big hitters. I know Super GT is a listener of the show. I know he follows me personally. I, for the life of me, don't know why. But I've always got along well with Steve. He's a great guy. I know he's taking some time out at the moment because I know it's been a lot for him, this downtime and these influencer races that he's been a part of. Has been a lot for him, you know. So that's honestly about it. Like that, they're the only really super big hitters that I talk to. Into the barrier a little bit. Me and ITB became friends a little bit again. If I really wanted to DM ITB, I would as well, but probably not so much now. I've kind of moved on from those big F1 YouTubers, but I'll openly hold my hand up and say I'm still subbed to Arav. I'm still subbed to Ben. He still makes good content. Been a big fan of his Tokka 3 Let's Play, for example. You know, I'm subbed to Jimmer, and I'm subbed to Super GT. I think that's about it from all the F1 guys. Oh, and Tom97 as well, who's come on such a long way. I remember years ago he was asking me for advice when he wasn't around the corner, and now he's got 35,000 subscribers. Proper proud of Tommy Martinez. Great guy. Great guy. One of the best F1 and MotoGP Let's Players combined that I've seen on the internet. Genuinely elite in both. Excellent player and a great guy. Journalism in motorsport. What? Said Zoe. Yeah, that's a that was a thing. It's why I don't like calling myself a journalist on the internet, because I know I'm not really in that club. I'm not in the trenches like a Luke Smith or a Hazel Southwell or a, you know, or a Jess McFadden or anyone else that's in that deep space. I am just a 27-year-old hobbyist podcaster that's gotten very lucky and done some very cool things in my years, and, you know, hopefully a few more of those cool moments come, you know. So, like I said, I don't want to blow smoke up people's asses and tell them that, you know, I'm this tremendous guy that got screwed by the system. I'm not. A lot of what happened with those guys is my own doing, and I hold my hands up on that, you know. So, like I said, I will always keep it 100, and I will always, if somebody asks me an honest question, I will always give you an honest to God answer, because I feel if you're taking the time out of your day to watch me, the least I can do is I feel like I have an obligation to be upfront with all of you guys. And I will always try and be as transparent as I can in all of that. Even if it gets me in trouble sometimes. Because I have taken many a chance, I have done things that many would consider unprofessional, and I have crossed that line on several occasions. And I'm not proud of myself for it, but I wouldn't change a thing if I went back and had a second chance. You know? If anything, I'm better for it. If that makes sense. I feel that I am a happier, healthier person because of Motorsport 101 than I ever was when I was Harrison 101 making gaming videos. And I can put my hand on my heart and say that I'm a happier person now than I was 4 years ago. And I think my time on YouTube is going to be this and not much else. Because I honestly think I'm a better podcaster and writer than I am a YouTube video maker. I think the algorithm, again, is, like I said before, it's designed for guys that, you know, do this full time. And I'm not. Last year, I was juggling a 40 to 50 hour job, a girlfriend, and then a very difficult breakup that I had to get through. And trying to find time to do podcasts, and then trying to find time to write, do videos, look after my sister, and still, you know, find the time for myself. Especially when you work a job that's unsociable in terms of hours. So, it's a lot. But I always try my best, because I love to entertain people at the end of the day. That's something that I've always taken happiness in that, you know. So, you still got time, Dre. You never know. You never know, mate. But look, random guy, I'll be real with you, man. I've got a good job. I have a good life. And I'm happy. And that's the most important thing, as far as I'm concerned. Look, it's not the best job in the world. I manage a bookies full time. It's a very interesting job. It's a hard job. Certainly mentally, it's a very challenging job sometimes, but I'm good at it, and I've got a career where that's concerned. You know, so I can't moan. Like, I would not trade in what I've got right now for a very hard shot at making it as a motorsport journalist. I know for a fact that certain people that are in that proper space got a ton of money to be able to go out there, travel the world, be in paddocks, and generate content. For example, I don't always see eye to eye with Hazel, for example. If you follow her at Hazel Sovell on Twitter, the world's best Formula E journalist, I respect the ever-loving shit out of her for being all in. She's been very transparent in the past in talking about how she's gone without eating and basically sacrificed everything because Formula E means that much to her. I haven't got that level of gumption. My balls are not that big. I could not take that gamble. But if you can, go for it. If it's a dream for you, chase it. By all means, you know. But, look, the F1 thing didn't really work out for me in the end in terms of being a YouTube guy, but I like what I'm doing, and like I said, I've got a good life. I really can't complain, you know. I'm very lucky to be in the position that I am, and the fact that even 25 of you at 9 p.m. on a Monday night while we're all on lockdown in quarantine want to listen to me ramble about God knows what else is a blessing, as it is. The fact that there is 2,800 people on Twitter that care enough about my shit to follow what I've got to say, and some of the best friends I've ever made has been through places like Twitter, you know. So I can't complain at all. You know, I'm in a very fortunate position, and I never try to lose sight of that. You know. Whew. Oh God, got a bit emotional there. Jesus. Yeah. Just checking the chat real quick. Any thoughts on doing an old IndyCar 500 for a watch along? Probably not, Charlie, because the Indy 500s are probably just too long. Like they're 3 hours plus. I mean, maybe if we could split them in two, but do you really want a watch along where you're having to wait for the second part? Probably not. And I don't want to put more stress on RJ from an editing standpoint, because for those guys who don't know, RJ edits the podcast. And he's been deemed as an essential worker in his full-time job. So it's hard for him right now to work full-time, quarantine at home, and then still dedicate that much time to editing the show. So I've just said to RJ, look after yourself, take as long as you need, because, you know, the last thing I want to be doing is stressing people out when it's already really fucking hard out there right now. And like I said, it's why I'm lucky. I'm not on furlough. I'm being paid in full during my downtime, and I know a lot of people out there aren't as lucky. So I've just said, listen, do what you got to do. You know, and the guys that are dedicated to the show and the podcast, they'll always be there. You know, so hopefully, I think you guys may have seen it on Twitter. We are doing Talladega Nights as our next watch along. That won't be episode 240 next week. That'll be 241. That'll be about 2 or 3 weeks away. So I reckon maybe end of May, early June. We're only doing shows every couple of weeks right now because there's no reason to be any more frequent than that right now. But so yeah, we'll have to wait and see how we go. But maybe is what the answer I said to Indy 500. The problem is they all tend to go long, very long, and I don't want to be like the Joe Rogan experience where podcasts are always 3 hours long every single time. I think that can be a bit too much, personally. I like around the 2 hour mark. I think that's about as long as you can. Anything more than 2 hours, I think you're starting to push it for people's attention spans. And having them as standalone shows, I think, work best. MotoGP, it's fantastic because a MotoGP race is 40 minutes long, 45 minutes long. It's short, it's sharp, it's punchy, and you tend to get better action. F1 races are about the limit on that because they're about 90 minutes. Maybe a bit more if it's a more chaotic race with multiple safety cars. Like Singapore's almost always 2 hours, for example. You know, so again, it's a lot of logistics to make it work, but yeah, like I said, we're doing the movie Talladega Nights in about 2 weeks' time. So you can look forward to that. I've never actually seen that movie. You want to know a fun fact? I've only ever seen about 15 minutes of that movie, and the reason why I've only ever seen about 15 minutes of it was because it was on in the background when I was horizontal with my ex. That's probably too much information for you guys, but that's just me being honest. I thought it was funny, you know. So it's kind of weird when that's going down and you can hear we can hear Will Ferrell's voice in the background. Gabriella, you mentioned about how you think we get along well. Do I know you from somewhere else? Because I've never seen your YouTube account name before now. Do you follow me on Twitter or another social media platform? Help me out here. Boric, I always like your videos about recent F1 events because of your good point of view. Thank you, man. I do really appreciate that. If I was going to continue making videos like that, is the opinion stuff is what I always felt I was always strongest at that. I always thought I had a good head for those sort of scenarios, and I always enjoyed making those videos most. So hey, you know, so only 15. Well, let's just say you lose track of time, Charlie. You used to follow me? Where, Gabriella? Do fill in the blanks for me, because I'm not sure. You do sound familiar, but I don't know from where. I'd love to see Jensen host his own show on Sky F1 or even something on something. Joey, to be fair, Jensen's on a lot of Sky F1 stuff now these days. So I don't think that's a million miles away. Like, Jensen is now essentially a part-time pundit now, like Nico Rosberg is for Sky F1 when he's hovering between Sky and RTL over in Germany. But it'll happen soon enough. I think it will. Jensen's a great presenter, actually. Like, he's got a lot of, like, he's got great natural charisma, and he's quite witty, and I think he'd actually be a very good fit as a full-time pundit / broadcaster for any network that you choose to join. I think Button's the sort of guy that, like I said, is like Jones. He gets it in that sense, and I think he'd be pretty good at that. You're a good guy, Dre. You have a strong head. Thank you, Harry. That's very kind of you to say. That means a lot. Very kind of you. I don't think I'm that great. I'm just me. Like I said, I just take one day at a time. That's what I've always been told. You know, just take one day at a time. See what the day throws at you and see what happens. You know. Let's just say the last 2 or 3 years have really humbled me. Having a first full-on relationship, actually being accountable for the house that I'm living in and paying the bills and chipping in more and having a level of accountability and, you know, managing my own bookies, you know, being in love, being out of love. A lot of that shit changes you. A lot of that shit makes you look in the mirror, and a lot of that makes you think about the sort of person you are and the sort of person that you want to be. You know? It's funny you say that, because one of my favourite phrases that me and my ex always shared was a quote from, and if anybody knows Doctor Who, you'll know what I'm about to say, but Matt Smith's final episode when he was the 11th Doctor, in the middle of his, because seemingly tradition now that these doctors get like a regeneration speech at the end of their time on the show, and there's a moment where Matt Smith looks at the camera and he goes, "We are all different people all through our lives," and that's good. It's okay. It's good to keep moving, just so long as you remember all the people that you used to be. And the next line, which is not, I don't consider it quite on the same level, but it's important. It's like, I will not forget one word of this, not one day. I will always remember when the Doctor was me. And that wasn't the Doctor speaking to us, that was Matt Smith talking to us. And I knew how much it meant to him, because I remember there was a behind-the-scenes video of his read-along of the script, and he burst into tears when he read that. But that first phrase has always stuck with me. It's going to be my next tattoo on this arm later in the year, whenever I get around to not being a scaredy cat and getting it sorted. So if you want a bit of free piece of advice from me, there you go. Oh, what we got here? Yeah, Jensen's fitting the dynamic very well. Yeah, God. I remember when Lewis and Jensen were pundits at one point. They were in the camera room working together. They were great. Like, Jensen's got a knack for it. You know? So, I've had no surprise whatsoever that that Jensen's fit in as well as he has. It's not a surprise at all. I think he's always had a knack for it. I've always thought he would be a good fit for something like that. Whew. I'll see how we go, but maybe another 20 minutes, maybe 9:30. If you guys still keep sending me stuff, maybe I'll go till 10. I'll see how we go. This was only meant to be a test, but I did say I would stick around if it worked out. And in all fairness to Sky, I've been streaming now for 2 hours 12 minutes, and not a single dropped frame. It's been perfect. So yeah, I can't complain at all. It's been excellent in that sense. So fair play to Sky. It looks like the booster has done the trick, which is excellent news. I'm delighted about that. So yeah, thumbs up all around. Oh hi. Is that Ollie Weir? Is that how you pronounce it? I hope I got that right. Hi mate, good to see you. Harry, do you reckon Seb could be a good pundit when he retires? If he wants to, maybe. I'm not sure on Seb because Seb's not the most outgoing sort of guy. But whenever he has been asked serious questions about the sport, he does tend to give quite mature, quite well-reasoned answers. I think he's still got a whiff of the V12 fanboy about him, but I can also understand that because he's a racing driver and that's the era he grew up in. So I can understand some of that fanboyish mentality about Seb, but when it comes to serious stuff, I've always admired his gumption. I remember when everyone was talking about, Lewis Hamilton, and I remember that Seb was one of the first dudes to defend him. Was Seb, and talking about their drivers and their personalities on or off the track. I remember Seb spoke to Hamilton's defense, and he was excellent when that was concerned. So there is an intelligent head on that man's shoulders, and if you've got that, you've always got a shot, as far as I'm concerned. Man, I'd love that job. I'd love to be like the opinionated pundit on a Sky Sports panel with a microphone and just bring in like almost a millennial perspective to those broadcasts. That would be a dream job for me, but I know I would probably never get it. But I would love to be on a Sky Sports F1 broadcast alongside a Martin or a Kravitz or a Herbert or a Brundle or a Pinkham or whoever. Like, that is the sort. When I think about dream jobs, that would be the dream. But a guy can dream. That's what dreams are for at the end of the day. This means you're streaming the next round of Jackbox. Why, Zoe? God. He might tell everyone to wear the red dress. Oh, yeah, I remember that one when he was at Red Bull. Bit naughty that was from Seb. Do you like Kanye West? I don't mind Kanye the musician. I don't like Kanye the person. He still has two of my favourite albums of all time, and that's The College Dropout and Late Registration are two brilliant albums. 808s and Heartbreak, I was one of the guys that liked that album. I know a lot of people didn't. But the man's made a lot of great music. It's just a shame he's such a dickhead as a person, really. Because what the hell happened for Kanye to go from George Bush doesn't like black people to, him wearing a Make America Great Again cap and endorsing Donald Trump? And just having this general god complex that I can't stand about him, you know? That I find disappointing about Kanye. I'm disappointed by what Kanye has become as a person. But I would be lying to you if I didn't say he wasn't a brilliant musician when his head's screwed on properly. Which, to be honest with you, these days I'm not sure if that's fully attached. But hey, what do I know? Kelly saying, well, Dre, buy Animal Crossing? Everyone and their mother has told me to buy Animal Crossing. I probably should. I must admit, though, I've never played an Animal Crossing game before, and I am, like, scared of spending £50 on it, and I end up not liking it. That's kind of been my general problem with Switch games in general. I played it very safe. Like, when I got it, I had Pokemon Sword as a bundle. I know I'm going to like a Pokemon game. So, that was a banker for me. Because I've played Pokemon games since the first generation. My brother got me Smash for Christmas. I loved Smash Brawl on the Wii when I had a Wii years ago. I've not even touched Ultimate yet. Because I'm just like, kinda, sorta, you know? I'm like, kinda meh on, you know, wanting to dedicate that sort of time to get good at that. But it is, and I haven't really got a lot of people to play it with. I know like 2 people that have got it on Switch, and I would like that, but it would probably get boring after a while. So we have to wait and see on that one. And I got Mario Kart 8 a couple weeks ago, and that's a very safe game. You can't go wrong with Mario Kart. It's Mario Kart, and it's pretty good. I've also got Tetris 99 because that's free, and I've also got Yu-Gi-Oh! Legacy of the Duelist on Link Evolution on Switch, because I'm a big Yu-Gi-Oh! Fan. I have been since the late 90s, so since I was a kid. So I've put like 55 hours into Yu-Gi-Oh! Legacy of the Duelist, just collecting cards and building decks, because I'm just a nerd like that. So so yeah, that's like my entire backlog of Switch. I've got Trivial Pursuit on the Switch as well, and I've got Monopoly on there. But again, not got a lot of people to play it with right now, and Ryan's not so fussed to play those sorts of games with me anymore. He's got his own mates, and he plays like Brawlhalla and Terraria online with his mates from school. So we're kind of separate on that one. You've got 300 hours on Animal Crossing already, Kelly. Jesus! What do you do on there for 300 hours? That's crazy. I mean, I can't talk. I've got 200 hours on Pokemon Sword right now, but that's the most I've played any game on my Switch, and like, Pokemon Sword has like ran out of things to do now, because everyone's now just waiting for the Isle of Armor to come out in June as their downloadable content, their first expansion, which I know is coming in June. So, yeah. So yeah, we'll have to wait and see how that goes. Now I need to find Dre and anime to watch too. It's funny you mention that, because honestly, like, I've now watched every Yu-Gi-Oh! Series now as well, up through Arc 5. What I was doing in the mornings, I was binge watching like 8 to 10 episodes of all the series I hadn't watched in my own time. I rewatched GX. I did the last series of 5Ds, which is only in Japanese, because they didn't do an English dub for series 3 of 5Ds. I watched all of Zexal, and I binge watched like the whole thing in like 2 weeks, which is like 140 odd episodes. Oh, actually a better season than I remember. I remember it being when I watched it when I was a younger guy. So, you know, that was all right. And Arc 5 was all right, but the Japanese dub is way better than the English version, if that makes any sense. Oh, screw came out of my chair. Got to fix that later. Yeah, I'm a decent Football Manager guy as well, but like, I bought Football Manager 2020 like 3 weeks ago, and I've got like 50 hours on that. So yeah, you know, I know the feeling, RCM. Trust me, I do. It's funny you mentioned that, Zoe. I'm actually not the biggest Little Karibo fan. Like, I only watched him for the Abridged series. I'm actually not a massive fan of his other content, to be honest. Like, and even then, my general liking of Yu-Gi-Oh! Abridged had gone down during Season 4. The Waking the Dragons arc, I think, was mostly his weakest work to date. But, yeah. I'm not sub to LK. Even, you know, so, you know, it is what it is. It's like, I'm not sure we'll ever get around to doing the final season of Yu-Gi-Oh! And in the same way that Team 4-Star quit doing the EBZ after the Cell Saga, which was kind of a bummer as well. So he's shocked. Yeah, I understand. I get it. Jeez. I'm still in shock Keddy's played Animal Crossing, a game that's been out for less than a month, for 300 hours. That is wild to me. Hang on, guys. Just a second. I'm just going to see where the screw came out of my chair. Just give me a sec. Oh, yeah, it's come out at the bottom. Yeah, it's no big deal. I'll screw that back in a minute. After we're done here. Yeah, completely agreed, Cam. Like, LK's best work was Freezer on DBZ. He was a brilliant, sassy Freezer. Like, as just this arrogant, this like arrogant, sassy jackass that had no problem committing genocide. Like, his work as Freezer was brilliant. Like, no problem saying that at all. Hi, Dodger. Life is good. Can't complain. All is well. Oh, hey, Cookie. Where are you going? Come on, bring her here.
Why am I on live stream?
Because you came into my room when I'm streaming. Cookie's here. Technically, it's Kendra's cat. She loves being held, honestly. No. Don't scratch me live on stream. Hey, okay. Point taken. Fine. Yeah, that was Kendra. That was my little sister. Yeah. I know LK's had a lot of. I know he's got a bad history of depression. I know his physical health wasn't great for a good while either. I hope he's on the mend, because I know. Look, I'd be doing him a disservice if I didn't say that that LK wasn't brilliant at times, but I think it's hard to keep up being that funny for that long an amount of time. It's not easy at all. Oh yeah, and that was Cookie, my sister's cat, in case you were curious about that. Cat wins. Friendship. Very good. Well, between you and the Namekian, I think I've lost my touch at genocide. Very, yeah, God, I love those quotes. Random question, have you ever tasted or seen a rich energy drink? No. I have seen them in person. I have no desire to taste one because everybody who has always told me the same thing. It's just Red Bull. It's just a glucose-based energy drink like all the other ones, really. It's not like a Monster or a Lucozade that has a particular taste. It's just another Red Bull. It's almost like selling the energy drink was like a ruse to do something else. Just saying. You know. It's like when everybody watches Leopard in Moto 3 and Moto 2 and they always ask me the same question where it's like, where have I never seen a Leopard energy drink on a shelf? Makes you think. Yeah, I know Chris has Cam. I know it's a bit more because they sponsor people in the United States and they just stick a ton of it in their fridges. Apparently, it's tangy Red Bull because it's just all that matters. All that differentiates it is how much glucose they put in it. You know. Pussy energy is superior. Well, you would say that, wouldn't you, Zoe? Yeah. I like that RCM knew exactly what I was getting at there. That's exactly what I think it is. Favorite Lucozade flavor? Look, man, Lucozade is not what it used to be, man. I remember like 4 or 5 years ago when Lucozade did its own version of Coke and it was brilliant. I remember when they had melon flavour and that was brilliant. The stuff they've got nowadays ain't the same. I actually drink Monster more than I do Lucozade these days. So, you know, if I had to pick one, I would still take orange. I think orange is still the best flavour of Lucozade. You can't go wrong with orange. But yeah, that's how I would probably go on that one. Apple's not bad either, by all accounts. At least you can actually buy pussy, 69p or 2 for £1, Zoe. I know you can. It depends on the context. Pink Lucazade's all right, but it's like it's not an orange, you know. Loving the shirt, Dre. Thanks, Connor. Appreciate that. Yeah, this is the Miami. I call it the Miami Vice England shirts. They cricket wise, this was a very limited run that New Balance did of the England one day shirt. They were doing a tour they toured South Africa early on in the year, and during the one day series, South Africa has something called Pink Day, where everybody dresses in pink to raise money for charity over there, and England were like, no, we'll take part as well. We'll make part of our kits pink. And they did in a collaboration with New Balance, and they did a very limited run of these on certain retailers' sites, and I was able to snag one in a 2X, and yeah, this is very cool. Amazingly, I've got 3 versions of the very similar top now. I've got this one, I've got the original one from the World Cup that I've got back there, which I might actually sell on, and the reason why is because... I think it's in here somewhere. Is it in here? I'm gonna put it down the bottom. I think I did put it in the bottom down here at some point. Give me a minute, guys. Might have lost it. think it's somewhere back here. Oh, I found it. There we are. I got a third one. It is a World Cup winners jersey, because you can see it's got the World Cup champions badge on the side of it, and it's also got Jofra Archer's number on the back, which is something that New Balance for some reason didn't do. New Balance, if you're watching this, yeah, let people put jersey numbers on the back of their shirts. Seriously, there is no reason why you can't do that. Test teams have numbers now. Branding is important. I promised a friend of mine, Dom, that I would go to a Sussex game. Or whenever Sussex is down to play Kent. And try and get Jofra's autograph on it. I did DM him on Instagram and see if he's got a PO box to send it to, where you can possibly get it signed, but because he flies between Barbados and the UK so much, it's probably hard to pin him down. But apparently, if you go to a Sussex game or something like that, he does a lot of autographs. So maybe one day. I saved it just in case he was able to get it signed. If he did sign it, I'd happily frame it, because Jofra was one of the underrated heroes of that World Cup team. So, you know. Anywho, about another 15 minutes, folks, because I'm starting to get hungry. I've not had dinner yet either. I would like to eat something. Oh, so you're diabetic, Richard. I didn't realise that. Treating hypos. I know that feeling, because I know my grandma had that as well when she was still around. She had a hypo. When I was like 11. It was one of the scariest fucking things, man. Luckily, she ended up all right in the end, but sadly no longer with us. But yeah, there you go. So yeah, about 15 minutes. If you want to get any more questions or comments in, I'll be down till 9:45 roughly, and we'll go from there. Let's have a look here. What did you do for uni and where? Looking for ideas. I went to the University of West London, formerly Thames Valley University. I actually kept it local, and my degree was in broadcast journalism. My advice I would tell you, RCM, is study something you're passionate about. If you're going to do anything, do it. Like, do something you genuinely enjoy. Because I went to uni for 5 years rather than 3. And I changed degrees 2 years in. There's another little fun story for you. My original degree was in business studies and finance. Because, and this is a really stupid reason, never do what I did here, folks. I got an A grade at A-level business studies. I was really good at business studies. The problem is, it's a really common degree that is really shit at getting you jobs outside of after you leave university. Don't do business degrees, folks. They are useless. And at university level, it teaches you shit you do not need to know. Okay? Business studies is the sort of degree you take when you apply for The Apprentice. And I don't mean that in a good way. I did it for a year and a half. I quit for 2 reasons. One, because my sister had just been diagnosed with leukemia. And the second reason was because I was sick of it anyway. I quit because I just didn't enjoy it. And I was at home just looking after the family. And in that time, I watched a TV show called Charlie Brooker's Screen Wipe. Some of you might know what that show is. It was a TV show made by Charlie Brooker, who would go on to do shows like The Weekly Wipe and Black Mirror. Some of you might know that from Netflix and Channel 4, like Dead Set as well, and that was him. It was a show that was all about how TV worked, and I binge watched all 5 seasons of it in like 3 days. I loved it. It was a brilliant show. I'd always had like a passing interest in media studies, but people didn't take media studies all that seriously back then when I was in school. So I binge watched Screen Wipe, and then I got inspired to email the person that was in charge of the journalism degrees at my university that I'd been to before. I said, look, I've not done much. I watched this show. I showed him some of my early written work for Motorsport 101 and some of the videos that I had made, the opinion-based stuff. And it was and Barry, who ran the course, was like, "Yeah, I like it. Have a spot on the course." So I transferred it all over. And I did that for 3 years. I graduated with a 2-1. So it was one of the best decisions I ever made in my life because it gave me some purpose. And look, the degree is barely worth the piece of paper it's printed on, but those were some of the 3 best years of my life because it was nice to study something that I genuinely enjoyed and I was passionate about, and I will always be grateful for it. So if you're going to do a university degree, do something that you're passionate about and do something that you know you'll enjoy. Like, think a little bit as well about, what you want to do career-wise. And if you change your mind, embrace it, because you're fucking young at the end of the day. And you've got all the time in the world to have a second or a third career. My mum went from working in social services for 20 plus years to being a teaching assistant to now being a full-time childminder. It just happens that way sometimes in life. You never know what could come along. So keep an open mind, but follow your passions. Study something that you know you'll like and enjoy. Don't just chase your high grades, because when the motivation runs dry, which it will, don't just do something because you're good at it. Do it because you want to enjoy it. That was what I would say. That's my personal opinion. Quantum saying, I remember watching your videos back in the day, and you started doing these journalistic videos, and you were kind of talking about your degree was kind of what made me want to do the same. So 11-year-old me thanks you. That's awesome. That's incredibly touching, Connor. Thank you. That's wonderful that you took some inspiration in me and the videos that I made. That's incredibly touching, actually. Wow. Wow. That stopped me dead in my tracks for a second there. Wow. 5 years later, I've just picked my A-level options to cater to trying to get a journalism uni course. What would you recommend? I can't say for sure, because every uni's degrees and what they put on their curriculums are always going to be a bit different. So my advice was, if you've got a subject in mind, email them. They've got departments that will steer you in the right path, and they will tell you what's on each degree. And because most degrees are split a year into 6 modules. So my advice would be, email them, ask around. If they've got an open day, go to it, Ask the right questions. Say, what's your degree made up of? What are your key modules? What sort of skills am I going to learn? And see what caters towards what you want to do. If you're more into the written side of the game, you might want to do a degree that's more purely in journalism, because it will focus more on the writing, the style, the elocution of it, the law side of it. From we'll be learning about things like libel and defamation, elements like that. If you want more, maybe towards the TV side of things, like, the news, broadcasting in general, video editing, look for stuff that's more broadcast relatable. Like, because when I did broadcast journalism, it was a bit of everything. You got journalism, news articles. We were doing things like filming short stories, video editing, video production, journalism in law, and a special project came at the end in my final year where I had to either do a 10,000 word dissertation on something or do a special media based project, and I chose to do a podcast. You might have heard of it. Still around to this day. Just saying. Going into sixth form when you can't wait, any advice? I don't know what you're studying, Harry, but prepare for the jump, is what I would say. There is a big jump between a lot of GCSEs and what A-levels are going to hit you. I did maths, chemistry, business, and ICT at A-level. I got it badly wrong. I should never have taken chemistry because I didn't do triple science at GCSE. Big fucking mistake. And what caught everybody out when I did maths at A-level was if the difficulty for like GCSE level maths is here, A-level is like roughly where my ceiling is. I'll say for free, if you're considering maths, do not do it unless you get an A at GCSE or higher. If you got a B at GCSE maths, do not take A-level maths. You will not make it. I am 95% sure on that, because the jump in difficulty is enormous, is what I would warn you on that. So what I would say is, I know, for example, that sixth form is a lot more laid back. It's a lot more about, self-study, less teaching hours, more free periods, not wearing uniform, big common room mentality and all that. Enjoy it, because it is enjoyable, but also don't lose sight of your studies, is what I would say. Because honestly, I fucked about in year 12 and it very nearly cost me everything. Like, I needed to get 2 Ds to go from year 12 to year 13 in sixth form. And I got a D and E in 2 U's. I very nearly had to drop out. I was very, very lucky that I had, ahead of sixth form, a guy called Mr. Kent, Jim Kent, who I owe him all the beers, because if it was not for him, I would not have made it. He turned around and he said, Dre, you're a good student, you've got 99.8% attendance, you were a part of the school council, you were a prefect, take the D, take the E, go into year 13. And I was like, what, really? And it was like, yeah, do it. You've done a lot for the school, it's about time the school helped you. And I know people that got similar scores to me did not get that second chance. And I turned the D and the E into an A and a C. Just by getting my head down, retaking exams, and just putting my average up. Don't get me wrong, enjoy sixth form, because the laid back and the laid backness and the freedom is enjoyable. I'd be lying to you if I said don't embrace that, because it is a massive part of the experience. But don't slack in your studies. Cheers, buddy. Don't lose slack of what you originally got your head down for, is all I would say. Don't lose sight of that. Because you were the guy I wished I had when I was in the younger years at school. Really mean that. And that is coming from someone who moved schools 10 times and countries 8 times. Jesus Christ, RCM. Wow. Holy shit. How did you end up in 8 different countries? And in 10 different schools? That is insane. Wow. That is bonkers. Like, you know, so that is incredible, RCM. I don't know how you keep your head screwed on at times. And you got ABB. That's fantastic, mate. Look, if you get 2 A's and a B, you'll pretty much be able to get into any sixth form you want, or any university in the country, pretty much. Only the super elite, like Oxford, Cambridge, and UCL, are going to take 3 A's. Or they might consider the A star. Like, if you get 2 A's and a B, you'll probably get in just about anywhere. You know, so keep at it. You're doing brilliantly. ABB is way better than anything I ever had. Trust me. You're doing brilliantly, mate. Salute you. I was never an academic. I was creative in a way that my school didn't understand. It's funny. It's been 2 hours and 50 minutes. That's the first splutter we've had. And I think it's because Ryan's literally just hopped on his PS4 and gone online. So I think that was more because of what Ryan did, more than the connection itself. So you know what? I actually can't complain. Safe to say the booster has probably worked. I might just have to be a bit careful of what time I'm streaming and, you know, what times to be aware of, but before then it was perfect. So I think it's pretty safe to say we've passed the test on that one. Gabriella, if you want an invite to our Discord server, send me a DM somewhere and I will set you up with a link and you can join. And who knows, if you interact well enough, if you like the cut of your jib, if you talk on calls and I like the cut of your jib, maybe, just maybe, you might end up on a show. Can't promise you anything, because if I'm honest, we're blessed. We have a situation where we could have 6 different hosts if we wanted to. We have a pool of me, King, RJ, like me, King, RJ, Cam, and Zoe and Chris. We potentially have like 6 dudes who we can host, so that's plenty. I'll be 100% honest with you. I'm not really looking for more hosts at the moment, but you never know. Having the option is nice. So get in touch with me somewhere. If you're on Twitter, shoot me a DM. I'll put the username in here in the chat. It's Harrison101HD. You can follow me on there. I'm at Harrison101 on Instagram. Shoot me a DM and I'll see what I can do. I don't normally give out invites to the Discord. It is invite only at the moment, but I'm a firm believer in giving people chances. So why not, right? God, Dad's Job had him moving around a lot. Both loved it and hated it. Wow, man. Internet in the UK is rather backward. It's better than Australia, but nowhere. I know from watching Worth It on BuzzFeed that Korea has the best internet in the world, apparently, on average speed. It's pretty crazy. Sorry to hear about the home situation there, Gabriella. I do hope it improves soon. one way or another, you know. And yeah, we do have guests involved as well. I mean, Jason, in the chat right now, he did the entire nomination list for the Motorsport 101 awards last year that we had in 2019. Did a brilliant job. So, you know, there could always be roles going around. You never know. So, like I said, keep an open mind. You got to be in it to win it, and all of that corny stuff and corny catchphrases, whatever you want to say. But yeah. If you want to follow me personally, you can. The details are there. I am at Harrison101HD is my Twitter, and Instagram is Harrison101. Look out for the anime face. You can't miss it. Facebook, I keep that to myself personally, but that one's a bit more personal. But if you get to know me well enough, I'm sure you can have me on there. Those are the best places you can find me, basically. If you want, Gabriella, if you can message me on... If you really want an invite, message me somewhere in private. I don't want to put the link out publicly, but if you really want it, find a way. I know you will. But I agree 100% on your discussion about School Dre. Thanks, man. Appreciate that. Really do. Really do. Thanks, Cam. That means a lot. Like I said, study your passions, keep your head down, and just keep an open mind, is what I would say. To be honest, the podcast is like the Clarkson Trio. It just works. Been here since the Karam and Kvyat podcast days, and stuck ever since. Was great to listen to. Good days of motorsport, barring the tragedies. Thank you, man. That's very, very... Look, honestly, comparing us to the Clarkson Trio is almost like the biggest double-edged sword you could imagine, because they are problematic in a sense in how they've conducted themselves over the years, especially Clarkson. But look, Top Gear is my favourite TV show of all time. I'd be lying if I said I didn't take any inspiration from Jeremy Clarkson as a host. If I have like 10% of the charisma of Jeremy Clarkson without the toxicity that he often brings to some of his programming and how he is as a person, I've got it made, really. Like, you know, I can't say any more than that, you know. We have a great dynamic, and yeah, you know, it really has worked. Me and King have known each other for nearly 10 years now. And RJ was obviously a late addition because Adam was the original part of the trifecta. He's gone off to do other things, but RJ's been a wonderful addition to the show. He saved the show, really, and anything else. And I'm very fortunate to have Cam, Zoe, Chris, everyone else that's been involved in it. It's been wonderful. As a closing note, yeah, I mean, best internet connection, clearly, I don't really know. I've only ever had Sky. I've been a Sky customer for 20 odd years. Like, my mum's like deep in the Sky VIP reward section, so I can't really say with an open mind what the best internet provider is. Apparently Virgin is very good if it's available in your area, but I can't say for sure because I've never had anything other than Sky's. Gabriel Hilton says, will Johnson make a one-off appearance in the future? Maybe. He's in our Discord server. We've always extended the olive branch. He was on the awards show in 2018, and he was great on it. Look, the olive branch is always there for Johnson to come back. We have never shut the door in his face or anything along those lines. He left on good terms. If he ever wants to come back, I would not stop him in any way, shape, or form, because he really is Jeremy Clarkson. I've known him as a good friend for 6 or 7 years, and you know he's a jack in the box and a fellow Aspie's kid, and I wouldn't have him any other way. And the door is always open for him to return, as far as I'm concerned. Cam, Vic, you guys are very, very kind. Look, regarding school one more time, and I'll make this my last one before I get out of here, I will say, I have a disability myself. I have Asperger's syndrome, and I didn't find out until I was 17 that I had it. Like, I knew from the time I was a child I was different. I knew from the time I was in a doctor's office when I was 3 years old, playing with the bric-a-brac or playing with those little pipes that go everywhere that have like the little beads you push along to amuse yourself. Like, I knew from a very young age I was different, that I was different to most kids, and how people handle that is always hard because kids don't know any better, and kids are dicks. Like, I've said it before, it's like original sin. We're all some degree of dickhead until we're at least the age of 20, and I'll be real with you, man. I was bullied until I was 16 years old. Like, I knew I was different. I didn't have big circles of friends. I was never popular. I struggled to fit in. I struggled to find myself as a person a lot of the time, and it's hard. It is very, very hard to find out where you belong. And I think a lot of being a kid in school and being a young person in general is figuring out where you belong in life. And look, I'm 27 and I still haven't got that entirely figured out yet. I know a lot of people that are in the same boat as me. I've always been open about that because, like I said, from the time I was 4, I knew I had a speech and language disorder. I knew I didn't speak like the average person did. I knew that I was I was different. I just knew I was different. And I didn't judge anybody else for it. And it was hard because, honestly, when I was younger, I was quite arrogant. Because I knew I was I knew that there had some form of autism in me, but I was high functioning. So when I was, and I don't think my schools ever understood that. They were yanking me out of classes to try and teach people how to, like, I was being taught things like how to make eye contact with people and how to improve my social skills because they thought that was the reason why I didn't get along with people. That wasn't it. It was because people didn't understand that I was a very bright kid, and I knew that I had a level of intelligence about me, but I don't think anybody knew or understood me for years and years and years. And it got worse when I went to high school. When I went to high school, I almost quit when I was 13. It was awful. I was picked on. Everybody thought I was Australian because of my accent. I wouldn't wish it on anybody. I was perceived as the black guy that spoke like a white guy. And like I said, kids don't know any better. And you look back on it now and you go, God, that was so stupid. It was also fucking ridiculous. But it also made me me, because it took a long time before I was understood, and a good teacher can see through all of that, and a good teacher can make or break you. You know, I had a history teacher called Mr. Shave who was exactly the same way, who understood me and got the best out of me. And I was not a great student. I was lazy. I didn't do homework. You know, I was messy. I was unstructured, and combine that with the bullying, school was awful for me. It wasn't until universities when I really found myself. People that understood where I was coming from, people that understood how my brain worked, and yeah. It sucks because school's meant to be the best part of your life, but it ends up being one of the worst. If there's one message I leave you here with tonight, it's this. Don't ever let any form of disability or difference that people don't understand define your life. Don't ever let it compromise your life. Don't ever look at it as something that can hold you back, because it won't. You can do whatever you want in life. You can be with whoever you want to be with in life to a degree. You know, you can don't ever let it stop you from being the person that you want to be, because it can be hard, and it's never going to be easy. It's never straightforward, but that's life. You know, life is beautiful. Life is a struggle, but life is a beautiful struggle. And I've had a lot of blows over my life. You know, my parents split at 18. My sister had leukemia. She got lucky and made a full recovery. You know, I've been through divorce, but my dad's not in my life anymore. You know, and sometimes Motorsport 101 is all I've had, and it's the most wonderful weapon that I've ever had in my life, because it's the one platform that I've always had, whatever has come my way in life, that has always understood and has always been there for me. And not everybody in my life has at that point, but M101 always has. And for that, I'm truly, truly grateful for all of you. And I'll say one more time, I'm autistic. I have Asperger's, and I've struggled with socially and with my language and socially being the person that I've always been. But it's never stopped me from being me. Man, don't ever hold yourself back from whatever difficulties you've got in life. There'll always be people around to pick you up. And keep grinding. It does get better, I promise. I've been Dre Harrison. Thank you very much for listening and watching. You guys are the best. You know where to find me. And yeah, I'll talk to you guys soon. Sayonara.